Chapter 1435. Boom. Amidst the booming sounds, the violent thunderbolts were like auroras that covered the entire sky. They exploded on the top of the mountain, turning into a thunder pool that floated in midair. They continued to cause explosions and galloping thunder, and continued to expand. In this instant, whether it was Luo Hao who was fighting with Marshal Tian Peng and the curtain-lifting general, Hui Na and Lu Yinghua who were fighting, or even the residents of the city at the foot of the mountain, they all raised their heads to look at the berserk lightning pool that suddenly appeared in the air, their faces filled with shock. Even the most ordinary of humans could feel the terrifying destructive power contained within each bolt of lightning, causing them to instinctively tremble. And in that violent lightning pool, bolts of lightning that carried terrifying heat and destructive power suddenly flashed and covered the great sage, Heaven's Equal's body. Under the scorching heat and destructive power, the great sage, Heaven's Equal let out a shrill cry of agony. The noble artifact named Vasvi Shakti treated the great sage, Heaven's Equal, as a unit and unleashed a terrifying power that could even burn and dissolve the gods. Furthermore, the sword gods who were crowned with the attribute of steel all shared the same characteristic, which was that they would melt away under the terrifying heat of the flames. The spear of light, which was capable of destroying even the gods, was now the best weapon to bury the great sage equaling heaven. Karna, who had this noble artifact, was known as an undying hero spirit that was no weaker than Gilgamesh, the hero king. As for this relic, its level had also reached the exceptional level of X compared to the obedient departing sword, EA, it wasn't any weaker. In terms of classification, this relic belonged to the category of godly relic. Therefore, the great sage, Heaven's Equal had no chance of surviving the direct attack of the god-slaying spear, which was known as a sure kill. He didn't even have the time to say his last words. The god of steel, who was famous throughout the land of China for being able to borrow the power of the heavens, earth, and stars, and was superior to most of his kind, screamed as his entire body was incinerated by the terrifyingly high temperature and destructive power, melting into slag. Eventually, the figure of the great sage, Heaven's Equal, Sun Wukong, gradually disappeared from the rampaging lightning pool. The thunderbolts, which carried terrifying heat and destructive power, continued to run, illuminating the entire world. Eldest senior brother actually lost? Then there's no other way. The canopy marshal and the curtain-lifting general, who had been blessed by the great sage, Heaven's Equal, stiffened in their battle with Luo Hao. They only had time to utter these words before one of them began to petrify while the other began to liquefy. In the next second, one of the two gods that had turned into a stone statue and a water statue gradually shattered, while the other dispersed into water. Just like that, they directly disappeared. That was to be expected. The canopy marshal and the curtain-lifting general were originally subordinate gods that the great sage, Heaven's Equal had summoned with great divine power. Now, as the summoner, the great sage, Heaven's Equal, had been eliminated and returned to the legends. The two summoned subordinate gods naturally had no reason to exist alone. Together with the great sage, Heaven's Equal, they also disappeared from this world. At this point, the great sage, Heaven's Equal had been killed. Luo Hao, whose entire body was spewing flames formed by powerful curse power, watched as the canopy marshal and the curtain-lifting general disappeared. Then, he raised his head and looked at the rampaging lightning pool that carried terrifying destructive power in the sky. His gaze gradually became serious. Even the unparalleled Wuxia king had to admit that. In the face of that attack, even if it was him, if he was hit, he would only end up dying. To think that he was still hiding such power. However, Noa Doria, Luo Zuelian, will not admit defeat because of this. At this moment, what emerged in Luo Hao's heart was a competitive spirit that he had not felt for a long time after becoming a god slayer. If Luo Hao regarded Warban as an enemy who would either kill him or live, then at this moment, Luo Hao regarded Noa as a lifelong rival and opponent. The surging competitive spirit made the peerless beauty of the land of China feel extremely passionate, and a beautiful smile gradually appeared on her face. In addition to Luo Hao, there were many people present who were staring at the rampaging lightning pool that had suddenly appeared in midair. For example, Hui Na and Lu Yinghua, who had stopped their duel at the foot of the mountain. Another example was the people who had been attracted by the powerful curse power of the god of disobedience and the god of deicide, which was far superior to all existences, hiding in the dark and witnessing this duel with their own eyes. On another mountain some distance away from the mountain where Noah and Luo Hao were, Ganivia looked at the rampaging lightning pool that had suddenly appeared in mid-air, his lips trembling slightly. What a terrifying power! Ganivia, whose predecessor was the goddess of disobedience, had given up her immortal life and transcendent divinity in order to create the Holy Grail, and thus degenerated into a god ancestor, could clearly feel it. How powerful a threat was that rampaging lightning pool to a god? As an anti-god treasure that could only exert the effect of one hit, but could even destroy the gods with one hit, the X-level, Sun, submit to death, Vasvi Shakti, was even more terrifying than the Spear of Longinus. After all, the Spear of Longinus had to exert different degrees of power depending on the level of divinity. But the Sun, submit to death, Vasvi Shakti, simply destroyed the existence of a god as a unit. No matter how high the divinity of the opponent's god was. No matter how strong the enemy's god was. In addition to the concept of the world, the threat of the spear of certain destruction, which destroyed everything as a unit, was probably above that of the sword of good departure, yea. Why is that Lord here? Why does he have such a terrifying power? Ganivia, who had spied on the entire confrontation between Noah and the great sage, heaven's equal with magic, uttered fearful words. Do we really have to be enemies with such an existence? It had to be said that Noah really left a terrible shadow in Genivia's heart. As the immortal goddess of discord, Ganivia was also a god ancestor above humans. On the surface, Ganivia was polite, but in fact, he was extremely arrogant. Otherwise, Ganivia would not have been enemies with the Black Prince Yarek and the God Slayer. In the past, Ganivia had also faced many transcendent existences. However, it was the first time that he felt fear for a person from the bottom of his heart like now. When Noah used unknown means to take the Holy Grail from Genivia's hands that even Yarek could not take, and also made it impossible for Genivia to summon the Holy Grail back, and when Noah almost forced Genivia into a dead end after killing Perseus, Genivia's heart had already been traumatized. Now, seeing that Noah could even destroy, steal, who could borrow the power of heaven, earth, and stars, the trauma in Genivia's heart turned into real fear. Now, Genivia was very sure. Noah was definitely Yarek, and even more terrifying than the other god slayers. Lancelot also had the same idea. He did not show his figure, but he witnessed Noah's power through the eyes of the demon queen under his protection. He was also trembling because of the terrible power of the god slayer. However, it was different from Genivia. Lancelot's trembling was not because of fear, but because of excitement. Such power, I really want to fight with him. For this, Lancelot trembled. Like Tian Songyun, Lancelot was also the most original, purest, and most primitive, steel. Although the current Lancelot was only a shadow of God on the ground to protect Genivia, the instinctive desire to fight still existed. Under such circumstances, Genivia thought of something, and a disc suddenly appeared in his hand. On the disc, a sword-shaped mark slowly emerged. Looking at this mark, Genivia's expression changed abruptly. Oh no! Chapter 1436. Beep beep. The flashing lightning gradually began to dissipate, and the strong light that illuminated the whole world gradually began to dim. Together with the diminishing lightning, it slowly converged. Not long after, the violent lightning pool that appeared under the sky became smaller and smaller until it completely disappeared, leaving only a few flashes of lightning that ran back and forth in the space. In the lightning, Noah's figure slowly emerged. He was suspended in the air, but his body was hanging down weakly. Taking a closer look. On Noah's body, his black shirt and black trousers were gradually dyed with a scarlet color. Noah's brows were tightly knitted together, and there was some pain on his face. Only Noah could feel it clearly. Under his clothes that were gradually dyed with a scarlet color, his skin was cracking inch by inch, and there was almost no part of his skin that was intact. The scarlet color that dyed Noah's clothes red was caused by Noah's own blood. Since the noble phantasm called Sun, Obey Death, Vasvi Shakti, had the terrible power to kill gods in one blow, it was not a power that could be used casually. First of all, if one wanted to use Sun, Obey Death, Vasvi Shakti, they would have to imitate the legend of Karna sacrificing the immortal sun armor and sacrifice sun, turn into armor, Kavacha and Kundala. This noble phantasm would be integrated with the body, and when it was removed, it would naturally cause harm to the wearer. By imitating the legend of Karna sacrificing the sun armor to obtain the god-killing spear, Noah also had to bear the damage that he would have to bear when the armor was removed. The reason why Noah's skin was cracking inch by inch was because of this. In addition, Sun, Obey Death, Vasvi Shakti, was also a noble phantasm that only had the power to attack once. That was to say, after the attack, whether it could kill the enemy or not, the god-killing spear would disappear and could not be used again in a short period of time. Similarly, the sun, turn into armor, Kavacha and Kundala, that was sacrificed could not be used again in a short period of time. It could only be restored after a period of time. This was the limitation of the two noble phantasms. Therefore, Noah could no longer use the two noble phantasms of the immortal hero Karna. He had to wait for a period of time before he could use them again. Enduring the excruciating pain all over his body, Noah clenched his teeth slightly and reached out a hand to take out a bottle of potion from the golden ripples that suddenly fluctuated like water. He unscrewed the cap of the bottle and poured it into his mouth. At the next moment, a gentle stream of starlight flickered all over Noah's body. Under the light of the gentle starlight, Noah's cracked skin recovered at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. When the pain completely disappeared, Noah let out a big sigh of relief. He threw away the empty potion bottle in his hand and wiped his lips that were wet with the potion. "I've finally dealt with that monkey." After saying this, Noah felt that something was wrong. No, it should be said that there was something wrong. Noah reached out his hand and slightly grasped a pair of palms that had just recovered. He frowned again. My authority didn't increase. That was right. Undoubtedly, Noah had killed the great sage, heaven's equal, but he did not obtain the authority of the famous ape god. For the current Noah, the authority of the god of disobedience had become a dispensable state. Many of the noble phantasms in Noah's treasure vault had power comparable to that of a single authority. Adding one more authority would not be of much help to the current Noah. However, he did not get what he was supposed to get. No matter who it was, they would care. Unfortunately, this was not the first time Noah encountered this kind of thing. In the battle with Perseus, after Noah killed the dragon slayer hero, he did not obtain any new authority. If this situation was caused by the same reason as the previous one. Noah suddenly narrowed his eyes. He turned his hand, and a scroll made of parchment appeared in his hand. It was the magic scroll of item location. Pang! As Noah threw the scroll in his hand into the air, the scroll opened automatically, allowing the parchment full of magic squares and magic characters to unfold in the air. Then, it was suddenly engulfed by the blue flames and turned into ashes. At this moment, the image that appeared in Noah's mind was a disc. It was a disc made of steel and gold. Once, in Napoli, when Noah killed Perseus and chased him to Guinevere, Guinevere took it out and introduced it as such. Arrowhead disc. It stored the authority of sword god summon. It was a god relic that could summon the deceased, Steel, again to fight for the holder. In the past, Guinevere used this god relic to absorb Perseus' godhead, causing Noah to not obtain Perseus' authority. Noah, who had come into close contact with this god relic, now used the item location magic scroll to find the current location of the arrowhead disc. As if he was enlightened, Noah turned his head and looked at a mountain peak in the distance. A fierce light flashed in his eyes. He turned into a stream of light and rushed in the direction of the mountain peak. Oh no! At the same time, Guinevere, who was holding the arrowhead disc tightly in his hand, also exclaimed. Naturally, Guinevere could think of what Noah could think of. After killing the great sage, heaven's equal but not obtaining a new authority, Noah would definitely suspect that Guinevere was nearby. Then, as long as he used some information-type magic, it would not be difficult to find Guinevere. Just like the last time when Perseus was killed. This time, as soon as the great sage, heaven's equal died, Guinevere encountered the danger that he was most unwilling to face, Noah. Understanding this, Guinevere could not help but tremble and shouted without hesitation. "Uncle! Uncle! Please protect Guinevere." As soon as he finished speaking. With a trembling sound, the space in front of Guinevere suddenly distorted, and an illusion appeared. The illusory figure gradually solidified, and gradually became solid. In the next second, the war god who was riding a handsome white horse, wearing pure white full-body armor, and holding a scale-shaped spear tightly in his hand, appeared. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, a stream of light suddenly shot over. It was like a meteor falling from the sky. It heavily collided with the direction where Lancelot had appeared. Dong! On the mountain peak, a violent impact was mixed with a roar that shook the sky. Like a tide, it exploded on the top of the mountain and rushed in all directions. Bang! Part of the entire mountain peak was like an erupting volcano, suddenly exploding, stirring up gravel and rocks all over the sky. Then, like a landslide, the gravel and rocks rolled all the way down the mountain, causing the whole mountain peak to tremble. Immediately, on the top of the mountain, in the impact of the explosion, two figures flew out, rubbing against the air. In the whistling sound of the wind, they both stabilized their bodies in midair. Noah raised his head and looked at the other side of the collapsed mountain peak. There, Lancelot was riding a handsome white horse, holding Guinevere in his arms, and riding the horse in the air. On the white horse, Lancelot clenched his spear, and his whole body was surging with surging curse power. Guinevere's pretty face was pale. Holding the arrowhead disc in his arms, he was more or less in a state of shock. Just now, if Guinevere hadn't decisively summoned Lancelot, the one who suffered Noah's attack would not be Lancelot, but Guinevere. Although Guinevere was a god ancestor who surpassed human intelligence, facing Noah, who was the strongest among the god-slayers, he would be killed in an instant. In other words, without Lancelot's protection, Guinevere would have been seriously injured, even if he didn't die. How could Guinevere not be frightened? Chapter 1437. The gravel and rocks that rolled down from the top of the mountain smashed heavily at the foot of the mountain, stirring up a thick cloud of dust. The dust rose like smoke and covered the entire foot of the mountain. On both sides of the mountain peak that had exploded, Noah's and Lancelot's gazes met in midair. It was as if sparks had been ignited between them, dazzling the eyes of the onlookers. Seeing Guinevere hugging the arrowhead disc and sitting on the horse's back, protected by Lancelot's arms, Noah snorted coldly. Sure enough, it's you guys behind this again. Noah didn't have anything to be obsessed with about obtaining authority from the great sage. Firstly, there were strong and weak authorities in the first place. Who knew if the authority obtained from the great sage, heaven's equal, would be strong or weak? Secondly, compared to Noah's fusion of Wells Lana, Mercado, and his own power, which had the effect of self-enhancement, the authority of the god Slayer and the god of disobedience were much weaker than before. In addition, Noah could use the fusion of his avatars, so he had a clear path of improvement. Adding one or two ordinary authorities was simply dispensable. Thirdly, in Noah's treasure vault, there were also many relics that could be comparable to authorities. In this way, Noah naturally wouldn't be obsessed with obtaining authority. However, that didn't mean that Noah wouldn't care about being manipulated in the dark. Not to mention, it was someone who had done it once. I let you guys go last time, but I didn't expect that this time, you guys still have the face to continue scheming against me. Noah's lips curled into a somewhat mocking smile. Don't tell me you guys really think that I don't have a temper. With that said, A vast curse power expanded from Noah's body little by little, as if an invisible flame was burning little by little, causing the surrounding air to appear in a state of distortion. Sensing the terrifying curse power gradually swelling from Noah's body, Guinevere, who had yet to recover from his shock, was jolted awake. Lancelot's grip on his spear also tightened slightly. For Guinevere and Lancelot, only about a month had passed since the dispute in Nabili. In Guinevere and Lancelot's memories, Noah's curse power was definitely not as terrifying as it was now. But that was to be expected. Compared to that time, Noah had already been reborn. Not only had his authority evolved and strengthened several times, but he had also developed the ability to use multiple clones at the same time. Not only did he obtain a treasure vault that contained all the treasures that only existed in myths and legends since ancient times, but he also obtained the grace bestowed by God and obtained ability points. Even the originally limited energy had become a bottomless pit, no longer having a limit. In addition to the strengthening of the Leo's solar sovereignty of the 12 zodiac signs and the dragon's solar sovereignty of the 12 equatorial stars, even without using his authority, the current Noah was more powerful than Guinevere and Lancelot remembered him to be a month ago. Under such circumstances, even the battle-thirsty Lancelot had to be cautious, let alone Guinevere, who was a little afraid of Noah. Guinevere could only hug the arrowhead disc tightly and look at the two ancient sword-shaped words imprinted on it. He forced himself to calm down, bit his lip, and said in a somewhat resentful tone. Didn't Master Noah also snatch the god relic that belonged to Guinevere from him? The Holy Grail is more important than any authority to Guinevere. So, you're planning to pay me back? Noah smiled sarcastically. But I remember that before this, you should have used the arrowhead disc to snatch Perseus. The debt between you and me should have been settled at that time. Now that you've snatched the Monkey King, what are you going to use to pay off the debt? Unfortunately, there's nothing on Guinevere that can catch Master Noah's eye. Guinevere mustered his courage. However, if you're willing to return the Holy Grail to Guinevere, I'm willing to listen to any conditions you have. As the rightful heir of the Holy Grail, Guinevere could summon the Holy Grail back even if it left his side. However, due to the fact that the Holy Grail used to host the world fragment, Guinevere could not summon the Holy Grail that fell into Noah's hands under the influence of the world fragment. In other words, at this time when the world fragment had left the Holy Grail, Guinevere could actually summon the Holy Grail back at any time. Unfortunately, the Holy Grail was now sleeping in Noah's Gate of Babylon. It was stored in a space that belonged solely to Noah. Therefore, Guinevere could not sense the Holy Grail. Similarly, Guinevere could not summon the Holy Grail back. Unless Noah took the Holy Grail out of his treasure vault and let it see the light of day again. In that case, Guinevere could summon the Holy Grail back at any time. Guinevere, who did not know this, thought that the Holy Grail was still in Noah's control. Therefore, Guinevere, who had always wanted to get the Holy Grail back, proposed such a deal. However, that did not move Noah at all. You're only saying this now? Noah said with a smile that was not a smile. Don't you think it's too late? As soon as he finished speaking, Noah's body tensed up, and the curse power in his body suddenly erupted. Lancelot and Guinevere were shocked at the same time. My beloved daughter, in my current state, I'm no match for the God Slayer. Lancelot suddenly said. So, now is the time to use the god relic left by our Lord and summon the deceased sword god to fight for us. I understand, uncle. Guinevere bit his lips and raised the arrowhead disc. Now that things have come to this, we can only combine the power of the 3 steel heroes to fight the god Slayer in front of us. Is that so? Noah laughed coldly. Very well, anyway, I'm very angry today, so no matter how many of you come, I'll take them all. Just as Noah was about to charge in Lancelot's direction and Guinevere was about to use the arrowhead disc to summon the 2 steel heroes, a burst of bright flower petals suddenly flashed between the 2 sides. Along with the petals dancing in the air, a peerless heroine appeared from the petals. The appearance of his figure caused the tense atmosphere that was on the verge of erupting to turn sluggish. Immediately, the beautiful woman who appeared from the petals directly faced Noah, exposing her back to Guinevere and Lancelot. She lightly opened her red lips with a somewhat angry tone. "King of Rakshasa of a foreign country, how dare you ignore the existence of Luo Hao and leave the battlefield on your own? This is a great disrespect, and it goes against the demeanor of an indomitable king. Who else could it be other than the arrogant Luo Hao who suddenly barged in like there was no one else around?" This peerless king of Wuxia did not seem to have Lancelot and Guinevere in her eyes at all. She only looked straight at Noah, her eyes full of anger. There was nothing she could do about it. After Noah defeated the great sage, Heaven's equal, Luo Hao became competitive with Noah and really regarded Noah as a strong opponent. Under such circumstances, driven by Luo Hao's high fighting spirit, he was preparing to challenge Noah openly as a martialist. Who knew that while waiting, Noah suddenly left Luo Hao and ran to find Lancelot and Guinevere. At that time, Luo Hao was stunned. After she reacted, Luo Hao's heart was filled with anger. The dignified leader of the martial arts world of China, the king of Wuxia, when had she been ignored like this? Not to mention, Luo Hao had already regarded Noah as a strong opponent. As a result, this strong opponent ignored Luo Hao. For Luo Hao, who thought highly of herself, this was even more unbearable. "King Noah, I, Luo Zuelian, now officially challenge you." Luo Hao stared at Noah with eyes full of anger. "Today, there must be a winner between you and me." Chapter 1438. When Luo Hao's angry voice resounded throughout the sky, the reactions of the people present were completely different. Lancelot was wearing a helmet, so no one could see his expression. However, the hand that was holding the spear slowly relaxed. Guinevere was startled at first, then his eyes rolled, and his expression began to relax. Only Noah, who was suddenly entangled by this unexpected trouble, Luo Hao, felt the anger in his heart rising all of a sudden. "I haven't settled accounts with you yet, and you're actually going to ruin my plans again." Settle accounts? The anger in Luo Hao's eyes seemed to grow stronger. "I, Luo Hao, am worthy of the heavens above and my parents below. I have never owed anyone anything. Noah King, this is an insult to me. I don't want to waste my time talking to you here." Noah raised his voice involuntarily. "I don't have time to deal with you now. Get out of my way. I'm not looking for you." Hearing Noah's words, Luo Hao naturally became angrier. However, Luo Hao still understood Noah's words. To put it simply, Noah was not interested in Luo Hao, but wanted to find the god ancestor and the shadow of God, who were ignored by Luo Hao. Although Luo Hao did not take the god ancestor seriously at all, let alone Lancelot, the shadow of God, it was precisely because of this that Noah's words made Luo Hao angrier and angrier. The existence that Luo Hao regarded as a strong opponent would rather ignore Luo Hao and focus more attention on the people that Luo Hao ignored. How could Luo Hao not become angrier and angrier? Luo Hao really could not remember how long it had been since he was so angry. If it was an ordinary person, Luo Hao would have already blasted him to pieces without saying a word. However, Luo Hao now regarded Noah as a strong opponent and naturally only wanted to defeat Noah in a fair challenge. Luo Hao turned his head and cast an extremely cold gaze at Guinevere and Lancelot. "Are you going to stop me, Luo Hao?" With such a sentence, the aura of the unparalleled king of Wuxia instantly locked on Guinevere and Lancelot. In response, Guinevere's body stiffened while Lancelot spoke calmly. "God Slayer of the land of China, you have misunderstood. I have absolutely no intention of violating the sacred duel. It's just as Uncle said, sect leader." Guinevere also reacted and smiled. The duel between the hierarch and Lord Noah, Guinevere definitely doesn't have the intention to disturb. "Since that's the case, you can all leave," Luo Hao said in an unquestionable tone. "If you leave now, I can still forgive your sins and not pursue your gains and losses." Luo Hao's words made Guinevere overjoyed. "In that case, Guinevere will take his leave." Guinevere hurriedly said. "Uncle." "I know what to do," Lancelot said regretfully. Although it's a pity to miss the duel with the two unparalleled god slayers, I'm just a shadow now. It's my duty to protect my beloved daughter, so I'll leave for the time being." After speaking, Lancelot squeezed the back of the white horse, making the white horse let out a long neigh. "You want to leave?" Noah's eyes sharpened. "How can it be that easy?" As soon as he finished speaking, Noah's figure turned into an arrow that left the string and shot out violently, rushing in the direction of Lancelot and Guinevere. However, this move made Luo Hao, who was already furious, even angrier. "King Noah, your opponent is me." Luo Hao flicked her sleeves and stepped on the air like a fairy descending from the sky. The feathers on her Han costume fluttered in the wind. Her delicate body turned and suddenly disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already in front of Noah, who was rushing in the direction of Lancelot and Guinevere. Just like Europe had magic, and the Far East had spells such as yin and yang, the land of China also had its own spells. That kind of spell was called the art of divination, which was the so-called magic. Right now, what Luo Hao was using was a technique known as the divine ground shrinking technique, also known as the divine feat. Using this kind of art of divination, even ordinary people could achieve unparalleled speed. As the king of martial arts, who was the best in the world in the land of China, Luo Hao used this kind of art of divination to achieve the effect of teleportation. As long as Luo Hao was willing, basically, Luo Hao could reach any country in an instant with the divine footwork. Last time, in Italy, in the battle with Noah, Luo Hao had also used this kind of art of divination. Now, Luo Hao once again used such a mysterious art of divination. "King Noah, take my palm." Facing Noah, who was rushing towards him, Luo Hao almost used the power of the Vajra divine art at the first time. With a supreme power, he struck a palm at Noah. This palm crushed all the air in the place where it passed, causing an extremely strong sonic boom. However, in the face of this palm, Noah completely ignored it, as if he intended to directly use his body to block the palm attack that could split mountains and rocks, and rushed straight up. This surprised Luo Hao, and he couldn't help but restrain the strength in his hand a little, making the palm slow down. At this moment, Noah suddenly flashed, and his figure drew a perfect arc, directly passing Luo Hao, and rushed in the direction of Lancelot and Guinevere without slowing down. Seeing this, Guinevere couldn't help but be shocked. "Uncle!" Suddenly, Lancelot tightened the reins in his hand without any hesitation, causing the majestic white horse's limbs to stomp heavily in the air. Like a bullet fired from a barrel, it retreated violently. However, Noah, who was rushing in the direction of Lancelot, suddenly trembled, and his speed suddenly increased by several degrees. He turned into a bolt of lightning and swept straight out. Clang! In Noah's hand, a burst of brilliant white light suddenly appeared, turning into a silver holy sword that flashed in the air. Holding the silver holy sword, Noah turned into a bolt of lightning, cut through the air, and flew in front of Lancelot, who was retreating violently. Lancelot's body trembled, and he almost reflexively clenched the inversed scale spear in his hand, and stabbed heavily at Noah, who was flying in front of him. However, in the next moment, a scene that shocked Lancelot appeared. Clang! Accompanied by the sound of metal clashing, the sharp long spear pierced fiercely into Noah's heart, creating a series of sparks. It was as if the long spear had collided with hard steel. It did not even pierce through an inch of Noah's skin. Ultimate sword skill. Primary form purple lightning. The holy sword, which was shining with brilliant white light, suddenly intersected with the sharp spear, cutting through the air, and violently piercing toward Lancelot's chest. Pucci! The silver holy sword penetrated Lancelot's heavy armor, pierced through Lancelot's body, and came out of Lancelot's back, bringing with it a burst of blood. Uncle! Guinevere's face was filled with horror. However, Lancelot had no time to respond to Guinevere. This was because Noah, who was flying in front of him, suddenly let go of the sword in his hand, turned around, and kicked Lancelot's body with a strong and powerful kick. Bang! In the muffled sound, Lancelot, who was holding Guinevere in his arms, was directly kicked away by a kick. He flew out from the horse's back, rubbing against the air. Like a kite with a broken string, he fell from the air. It didn't take long for Lancelot and Guinevere's figures to disappear between the mountains, and no one knew where they fell to. The majestic white horse immediately dissipated like mist, disappearing without a trace. Noah lowered his head and looked in the direction where Lancelot and Guinevere disappeared. Just as he was about to dive down, a violent spell vibrated in the air. A fierce gust of wind suddenly shook, like a storm, rushing in the direction of Noah. Noah's figure stagnated, and he took a deep breath. "Do you really think I'm a sick cat if I don't show my power?" With a flip of his hand, a gorgeous scabbard appeared in Noah's hand. Bloom. An ideal place away from the mortal world. Avalon. The gorgeous scabbard bloomed with bright light, turning into a crystal-like barrier, covering Noah's body. Chapter 1439. Boom. The demonic wind raged wildly in the sky like a storm, and its scale instantly expanded to a range of thousands of meters. With a roar like an explosion, it swept across the entire sky. At the edge of the raging demonic wind, Luo Hao, who was suspended in mid-air, stared angrily at the center of the storm. The curse power that emerged from her delicate body turned into a substantial gust of wind, gushing out like a wave and joining the raging storm, causing its scale to continue to expand. That was Luo Hao's second authority, Dragon Roar and Tiger Roar. It could set off shock waves and shake up violent wind waves, allowing Luo Hao to gain the authority to control the demonic storm. Being ignored by Noah again and again, the furious His Excellency did not show any mercy this time. He raised the power of his authority to the limit and continued to increase the curse power, expanding the power of the storm. The heavens are clear, the earth is peaceful, the people are peaceful, the world is peaceful. The pleasant ballad slowly echoed from the angry Luo Hao's red lips, causing the curse power that swelled from Luo Hao's body to continue to turn into a demonic wind, pouring into the storm ahead like a wave, causing the storm to become more and more violent. Luo Hao's Dragon Roar and Tiger Roar was usurped from the goddess Gayatri in Hindu mythology. She was a goddess who was closely related to songs. Therefore, when Luo Hao sang the pleasant ballad, it was not surprising that the demonic wind that accompanied the ballad was so powerful that it could overturn mountains. What's more, Luo Hao was still constantly increasing her curse power, singing the ballad, and expanding the power of the storm. If it was not in the sky but on the ground, it would have caused an unimaginable disaster at this time. Of course, Luo Hao had never cared about this. For Luo Hao, what the situation on the ground would become was never something she needed to care about. Compared to everything in the world, Noah's position in Luo Hao's heart was definitely more important. For the king of Wuxia, a strong opponent was something that could only be encountered by chance. Therefore, being ignored by Noah, Luo Hao's anger could be imagined. To die in a field battle, the defeated horse cries out in sorrow to the heavens, the crows peck at people's intestines, their beaks fly up to hang on the withered branches. Luo Hao, who was continuously chanting a heavenly song with a furious expression, stared at the storm in front of her that was so violent that it was beginning to distort the space around her. "King Noah, you may be heartless to me, but I, Luo Hao, am an unparalleled martial artist. I definitely can't be unjust to you. So, that was my last tolerance. Now, I won't be merciful anymore." As soon as she finished speaking, Luo Hao closed her eyes and lightly opened her crimson lips as she prepared to sing the song that was like celestial music once more. However, just as Luo Hao was about to sing the ballad again, her mind suddenly trembled. Unlike Noah, Luo Hao did not have a superb perception ability that could even capture the trajectory of God's speed. However, Luo Hao had been practicing martial arts for more than 100 years, and had long since mastered the mind's eye technique that could even counter the Godspeed technique. Therefore, when Luo Hao sensed something, she immediately opened her eyes, and the curse power in her body increased again. It was also at this moment that a figure, whose entire body was covered by a barrier formed by sparkling and translucent crystals, rushed out from the raging demonic wind, causing a sharp piercing sound. Wherever it passed, the demonic wind that could even lift mountains seemed to be pushed away. It was all pushed aside by the barrier formed by the sparkling and translucent crystals, unable to advance even an inch. Immediately, the figure that cut through the raging demonic wind shot in front of Luo Hao. "I'm heartless to you." An extremely angry voice rushed into Luo Hao's ears. "You do things your own way, do whatever you want, and ruin my plans without permission. You actually dare to say that I'm heartless to you. Even Buddha is angry. If I don't teach you a lesson, you'll really think that I don't have a temper." As soon as he finished speaking, Noah suddenly turned around, like a spinning top, and flashed behind Luo Hao. "Ha!" Luo Hao shouted, and in the direction of Noah, she fiercely struck out a palm that shattered the air. In the face of this palm, Noah was still the same as before. He still did not dodge, and instead, he turned around and rushed behind Luo Hao. Just a moment ago, Noah also ignored Luo Hao's palm strike, causing a trace of hesitation in Luo Hao, which gave Noah the opportunity to dodge. No, it would be more accurate to say that it was precisely because he predicted Luo Hao's hesitation that Noah did not dodge, causing Luo Hao to stop her palm strike, thus bypassing Luo Hao. As the saying goes, once bitten, twice shy. This time, Luo Hao no longer had any hesitation. She activated all the power of the Vajra divine art, and with the momentum of smashing mountains and rivers, she heavily struck out with her palm, landing on Noah's body. Bang! A deafening muffled sound resounded, bringing with it a circle of vigorous chi. Like a shock wave, it formed a ring shape and shook in all directions. However, this palm strike that could split mountains and rivers, when it landed on Noah's body, was actually blocked by the crystal-clear barrier, and did not affect Noah at all. What? Luo Hao could not help but be shocked. Combining the strength and skill of the Vajra divine art, and the 12 flying phoenix divine palms, the palm strike of the unparalleled Wuxia king was comparable to a direct hit from a meteorite. In the face of such a blow, Noah actually completely withstood it. He did not give Luo Hao too much time to be surprised. Noah, who completely ignored Luo Hao's palm strike, relied on the defense of Avalon and finally flashed behind Luo Hao. Then, Noah raised one hand, aimed at Luo Hao's neck, and knocked down heavily without the slightest bit of mercy. Bang! Immediately, a hard elbow slammed into Luo Hao's slender neck. Ugh! Luo Hao groaned, and the light in her eyes shook violently, and gradually dissipated. After being hit heavily on the neck, Luo Hao only felt that her vision began to distort, and her consciousness began to fade. It was as if she could no longer feel the strength in her body. She staggered in midair, and turned her head with difficulty to look behind her. There, Noah's back was facing Luo Hao, and he did not even look at Luo Hao. That scene was undoubtedly a blow to Luo Hao. Then, Luo Hao's consciousness completely disappeared. The raging storm in midair also slowly dissipated. At the same time, between the mountains, a bolt of lightning flashed, and at a certain moment, it landed on the ground. The lightning burst forth with dazzling sparks, and gradually twisted into a human figure. When the lightning dissipated, a young man appeared in the air. It was the Black Prince, who had the lightning spark power of the Seraphic Speed Authority, Yerek. Yerek lowered his head and looked at the ground in front of him. There was a very conspicuous pool of blood there. Did he still escape? Yerek snorted coldly. Just like before, only his ability to escape is exceptionally outstanding. The battle between Noah, Luo Hao, and the Great Sage, Heaven's Equal, was too loud for those who were extremely sensitive to curse power. Therefore, not only Ganivia, but also Yerek, who had followed Ganivia here, was attracted. Of course, Yerek also witnessed the scene of Lancelot being instantly injured by Noah, and falling between the mountains with Ganivia in his arms. Seeing that Noah was entangled by Luo Hao when he planned to continue chasing the enemy, Yerek immediately used the Seraphic Speed Authority to chase after him. His purpose was naturally to deal the final blow. Unfortunately, if Ganivia was so easy to deal with, Yerek, who had the Seraphic Speed Authority, would not have been fooled for so many years without killing this enemy. But that guy forced Ganivia into a desperate situation more than once, right? Yerek turned his head, looked into the distance, and muttered. After disappearing for a month, I didn't expect him to be in a place like this, and his strength is getting stronger and stronger. It's probably not that easy to get the Holy Grail from him, Yerek pondered. It's better not to casually contact him, go back and replan. The thing he had been pursuing for years was right in front of him. However, Yerek did not let this go to his head. As a famous sage among the god slayers, Yerek would not rashly attack Noah without absolute confidence. Chapter 1440. When Noah carried the unconscious Luo Hao and returned to the mountain peak where he fought the great sage, heaven's equal, and came to the foot of the mountain, he immediately saw Hui Na and Lu Yinghua confronting each other. The situation of these two proud sons of heaven was somewhat different. Hui Na put the katana in her hand on the ground and knelt there on one knee. Her pretty face was covered with sweat, and she was extremely tired and panting. Lu Yinghua, on the other hand, raised a palm, slowly opening and closing it, and stood there with his back straight. If one looked carefully, they would find that. Although Hui Na was kneeling on the ground on one knee, looking extremely exhausted, her body did not suffer the slightest bit of injury. Lu Yinghua's slowly opening and closing palm was branded with many scars, and he looked a little embarrassed. Seeing this, Noah could roughly guess the process of the battle. In terms of strength, Hui Na, who could use God's descent, should be stronger than Lu Yinghua. Therefore, from the beginning, Hui Na probably directly used God's descent to chase after Lu Yinghua, and suppressed Lu Yinghua in an instant. However, the so-called God's descent was not that easy to use. The burden on the body to accept the power of the gods with the body of a mortal was not small. Therefore, in the end of the battle, Hui Na, whose body gradually accumulated a burden, began to feel tired. Lu Yinghua, who survived Hui Na's attack under the state of God's descent, was probably preparing to counterattack now. Obviously, if there were no obstacles, the battle would definitely end with Lu Yinghua's victory in the end. After all, although Lu Yinghua was injured, he did not lose his ability to fight. As for Hui Na, looking at her exhausted appearance, even if she could fight, she would not be able to hold on for long. Therefore, in the end, it would definitely end with Lu Yinghua's victory. Should it be said, as expected of the direct disciple of the God Slayer, the Qilin of the Chinese martial arts world? However, to be able to force Lu Yinghua, who was a disciple of the proud and arrogant king of Wuxia, into such a state, Hui Na was also very amazing. Hui Na and Lu Yinghua, who were in the middle of the confrontation, seemed to feel something. They turned their heads and looked over, and then saw Noah, who was directly carrying Luo Hao on his shoulder. Seeing this scene, the two of them were stunned at the same time, and then they reacted. "My king!" Hui Na exclaimed in surprise. Lu Yinghua, on the other hand, stared blankly at Luo Hao, who had obviously fainted on Noah's shoulder. His open palm slowly relaxed as he sighed. It seems that the battle between Master and Lord Noah has ended with Master's defeat once again. Saying this, Lu Yinghua cupped his fists and bowed to Noah. No wonder he is known as the strongest existence among the demon kings who can kill gods. Lu Yinghua is full of admiration. Lord Noah's martial strength is simply unparalleled in the world, peerless in the world, no one can. Stop, stop, stop. Noah felt goosebumps all over his body as he hurriedly shouted to stop. Don't continue. I don't buy it. My king. Hui Na tried her best to prop herself up and stood up with difficulty. Where is the great sage, heaven's equal? It's already settled. Noah turned his head and looked at the half-dried mountain peak, as well as the mountain peak that seemed to have been ravaged by a huge typhoon. It was a horrible sight to behold as he spoke faintly. When we go back, I'll let Mr. Gandu clean up the mess. Is that so? Hui Na looked at Noah with sparkling eyes, her face full of admiration. As expected of my king, he's too powerful. Although he is a famous hero in our country, in the face of two peerless god slayers, even the great sage, heaven's equal can't do anything. Don't say such obvious things. Lu Yinghua first ridiculed Hui Na, then took a step forward and continued to bow to Noah. We have fully witnessed Lord Noah's king's prestige. Even if master is defeated by you, he shouldn't have any complaints. So, could you please return master to Yinghua? Hearing this, Noah felt the soft body of the beauty on his shoulder. When he recalled Luo Hao's entanglement with him, the anger in his heart rose again. At that moment, Noah said in an unquestionable tone. It's not that easy. From now on, Luo Hao is my captive. Lu Yinghua's face stiffened, and his eyes widened. Even if he was the Qilin of China, at this moment, he could not help but doubt his ears. You. What did you say? Lu Yinghua asked with uncertainty. Captive? That's right. Noah glanced at Lu Yinghua. From now on, Luo Hao is my captive. If you have any objections, you are welcome to report to me at any time from the 5 purgatories sect under Luo Hao's command. After saying that, Noah ignored Lu Yinghua's stunned expression and turned to look at Hui Na. Hui Na, can you still walk? No. No problem. Hui Na also recovered from her shock and quickly said. Hui Na can continue to walk. Then let's go back. Noah lifted his feet and walked forward. Hui Na quickly put away the tachi in her hand and followed Noah while murmuring excitedly. So powerful, he actually captured a demon king. The king is really powerful. Hui Na doesn't know what to say. It seemed that this girl was feeling excited. Only Lu Yinghua was left. He stared blankly at the direction where Noah and Hui Na left. After a while, his face was full of distress. We're in big trouble. On the other side, on a beach, Genivia's figure suddenly appeared here. As soon as he appeared, Genivia looked at the ocean in front of him with a face full of worry. Uncle, how are you? The image of the pure white knight suddenly appeared on the surface of the ocean and asked in a deep voice. It's okay. This body is just the shadow of a god. No matter how serious the injury is, it won't be a problem. Hearing this, Genivia breathed a sigh of relief, and then his expression became melancholic. I didn't expect that lord to be so strong that even uncle couldn't withstand one of his moves. It's really terrifying. That god slayer is really strong. It ignited my fighting spirit that I haven't felt in a long time. Lancelot's voice became intoxicated and joyful. That peerlessly exquisite sword strike. That lightning-like sword strike is simply too wonderful. I really want to go all out and fight with him. Hearing this, Genivia was silent. After a while, Genivia seemed to have made a major decision and raised his head. Then uncle, please appear as the god of disobedience. Don't be my shadow and guardian anymore. The atmosphere in the air suddenly changed. The intoxication and joy in Lancelot's tone disappeared without a trace. After a moment of silence, he spoke faintly. My beloved daughter, the reason why I can protect you and be your shadow and guardian is because I have the guardian spell that is connected to you. If I appear as the god of disobedience, you should know the consequences, right? Genivia knows that if uncle becomes the god of disobedience, you will be swallowed by madness, forget the mission of protection, and become a berserker. Genivia smiled bitterly. However, our current enemy is too powerful. If you plan to confront that lord, uncle must be able to exert your full strength. If you're just a shadow of a god, you won't be a threat to that lord. Indeed. Lancelot nodded. But, my beloved daughter, we haven't found the whereabouts of our master yet. It's a little too impatient to make such a choice now. We can avoid that demon king. Finding our master is our mission. No, uncle, I have a feeling that we are very close to the master's location now. Genivia shook his head. The witch's intuition tells me that the master is here. Is that so? Lancelot pondered. Then, we may not be able to avoid confronting that demon king. So, uncle, please agree to my request. Genivia said so. And, before Uncle appears, Ganivia will also prepare a new weapon for you. After that, Ganivia waved his hand. Hum. As the space trembled, a very long double-edged sword covered with rust suddenly flashed out. On the rusty sword, a frightening aura flashed and disappeared. Chapter 1441. When the great sage equaling heaven was killed in the modern world, the elders who had a deep relationship with the great sage equaling heaven were the first to receive the news. At this moment, Susanoo, the monk, and the princess reunited. The place where the three of them were at was not the world that was covered by the storm, but a beautiful courtyard. Sitting around a stone table in the courtyard, Susanoo, the monk, and the princess looked at each other. Then, let's talk about our opinions. The first to speak was the owner of this courtyard, the descendant of the ancient earth goddess known as the princess. Sir, mage, what do you two think of the turmoil this time? The princess's words made both Susanoo and Tyrant sigh. The peace that has been peaceful for a long time is about to be broken, and the earth will once again welcome chaos. The monk directly said the truest thoughts in his heart. I'm afraid that the hero of steel, who has been sleeping for a long time and exists to destroy the demon king who killed the gods, should be awakening soon. The monk's words made the atmosphere of the entire space slightly heavy. The last king. Known as the natural enemy of the god slayers, the hero who existed to destroy the demon king. Sun Wukong once said that in order to destroy the demon king who killed the god slayers, the heavens and the stars would bless the fused steel when they faced multiple god slayers. That was the ancient covenant that the gods had jointly established. Obviously, the gods also hoped to destroy all the god slayers. For this reason, he was given the mission to destroy the demon king, and was known as the last king. Whenever multiple god slayers appeared on the earth, the god of steel would wake up and destroy the demon king who was wreaking havoc on the earth. Whenever all the god slayers on the earth were destroyed, the god of steel would fall into a deep sleep again, silently waiting for the next opportunity to carry out his mission. Because he existed to destroy the demon king, he was also known as the hero. Also because the era when multiple god slayers existed was regarded as the end of the world by the gods, the god who appeared in the end of the world was also known as the last king who appeared in the world. And of course, the hero who had annihilated so many god slayers was also theoretically the strongest, steel. Only a few people knew about the existence of the last king. Only a few people knew that every time the hero appeared and wiped out all the god slayers, he would fall into a deep sleep on the ground where the last god slayer he killed was. Now, the land where the brave warrior was sleeping was the island country at the end of the east. In order to prevent the strongest, steel, from awakening, Susanoo, the monk, and the princess summoned the great sage, heaven's equal. They imprisoned the hero with the curse and made him appear when necessary to slay the dragon and kill the snake to eliminate all factors that would awaken the hero. But now, the great sage has been killed, and the maidservant named Ganivia has finally found this place. Susanoo shook his head. Furthermore, there are already 7 godslayers on the surface. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call this era where 7 godslayers exist at the same time an apocalypse. In other words, all the factors needed to awaken His Excellency have been completed. The princess closed her eyes and spoke in a compassionate tone. The hero's reawakening has reached an unavoidable time, right? When the time comes, the first to be involved in the dispute will definitely be the island country that has a close relationship with us. The monk looked at Susanoo and the princess one after another. Do you think there is anyone among today's godslayers who can stop the hero? It's impossible, right? Susanoo curled his lips. Since ancient times, there have been many demon kings who have killed gods. Among them, there was no lack of people with courage, perseverance, and ability. But they all fell under the sword of that hero. How could it be so easy to stop him? Even the Rakshasa king, who now lives in the land where the hero is sleeping, can't stop him. The princess raised an objection. The Rakshasa king that even old Mr. couldn't do anything about, I believe that his ability is not to be outdone by any of the previous godslayers. When the slumbering hero awakens, he will definitely become the guardian of the land. However, as soon as this sentence fell, a voice suddenly sounded. Don't flatter me, I don't want to be the savior of the world. As such a sentence sounded, Susanoo, the monk, and the princess were all shocked. They quickly turned their heads and looked at the corner of the courtyard. In the corner of the courtyard, in front of a rockery, a figure was leaning against the cold rock with his arms crossed. He didn't even look at Susanoo, tyrant, or Princess Susanoo. He said sarcastically. Pushing the troublesome matters to others while you hide in the dark and pretend to be worried about the country and the people. You casually judge others and take the initiative to position others as saviors and protectors. You all are in a good mood. It's you. Susanoo and the monk exclaimed in surprise. Rakshasa. Rakshasa king. The princess was also surprised. You. Why are you here? Noah opened his eyes and looked at the princess. Although the Western Heaven Palace has been destroyed, the path to the secluded world still exists. Through there, you can reach the space where Sun Wukong was originally imprisoned, and then teleport here. It's not strange, right? In addition, don't ask me how I know which space you are in. I have a witch with a very good spirit vision, and you once turned her into Magatama and carried her with you. At that time, the remnant of your aura and curse power was the best catalyst for that girl to trigger her spirit vision. In other words, the reason why Noah knew that the princess and the other two were here was entirely because of Yu Li's spirit vision. Cut the crap. Noah leaned against the rockery with his arms crossed, but his eyes were looking at the direction of Susanoo, the monk, and the princess. Tell me, where is the last king that you said is sleeping on the island? The audience suddenly became silent. They didn't expect that Noah would suddenly come to them and directly ask the most important question, so the three of them couldn't react for a while. Don't tell me you don't know. Noah mentioned intentionally or unintentionally. Even Ganivia, who has been looking for the last king, didn't know the whereabouts of the last king, but you knew from the beginning that Steel was sleeping here, and you also specifically called Sun Wukong to kill the dragon and snake. Obviously, you know something. Saying such a sentence, Noah looked at the three of them with a smile. For example, where exactly is Steel hibernating and so on. Susanoo, the monk, and the princess were suddenly speechless. What? You don't want to say? Noah sneered and turned his head away. That's fine, but since you want others to deal with a difficult enemy, and also want to hide, then don't expect others to act according to your plan. After saying that, Noah straightened up, and a cold expression appeared in his deep dark eyes. It doesn't matter if the last king wakes up or if he continues to sleep. If it's necessary, then we'll deal with him. If it's not necessary, then we'll let him go. That's what I do. And you? Noah's eyes swept over Susanoo, the monk, and the princess. Since you don't want to do anything, then don't let me find out that you are secretly doing something. Otherwise, you have lived for so many years, and it is indeed enough. Leaving such a sentence, Noah's figure suddenly disappeared from the place, and disappeared without a trace. Susanoo, the monk, and the princess were silent. Sir, master. The princess looked at the two of them with a reproachful gaze. Making the Rakshasa king feel so disgusted, now, are you two satisfied? Susanoo and the monk both had a bitter expression, and they couldn't say anything. After all, in the end, it was the two of them who thought highly of themselves that led to this situation, right? Now, the two of them finally understood. Perhaps, they always thought that they controlled the whole chessboard. However, they were not the only ones who could play chess. Chapter 1442. Through the passage to the hidden world, Noah walked out of the Western Heaven Palace, bathed in the sunlight again, and took a deep breath of fresh air. The annihilation of the great sage, Heaven's equal, had only happened in the morning. Now, it was afternoon, and in another 2 or 3 hours, dusk would come. Undoubtedly, it had only been 5 days since he returned to this world, but Noah felt as if a long time had passed. Probably, it was because in these 5 days, there were too many disputes around Noah, right? Sure enough, I guess I'll have to spend my life busy. Thinking about it carefully, Noah had only lived for about 10 years. From the time he could remember, Noah had appeared with the appearance and intelligence of a 10-year-old. Now, Noah was almost 20 years old. Among them, there were several years where he cultivated in the deep mountains and forests. The other years were basically spent in various worlds searching for world fragments while trying to integrate himself into various worlds, and then being involved in all kinds of disputes. In other words, living until now, Noah had not lived many peaceful days. However, that was to be expected. Although he still did not know how he was born, at least, Noah's origin was definitely not simple. This matter could be confirmed. After all, only Noah could enter the between worlds and travel between worlds. Only Noah could repair the broken worlds and restore the worlds in the between worlds to their original state. Since that was the case, with Noah's special origin, his life experience would naturally not be ordinary. However, how long would it take to completely restore all the worlds that were as numerous as stars in the space between worlds? It was estimated that even if it took 100 or 1,000 years, it might not be able to completely restore them. Of course, if it was just a waste of time, that was not a reason for Noah to be discouraged. The lifespan of a god slayer was very long. For example, Warban and Luohao had already lived for more than 200 years. Moreover, Noah's Gate of Babylon also had many items that could prolong one's life, and there were even immortal herbs that could make people immortal. Lifespan was not a problem at all. Therefore, what Noah really cared about was not how much time it would take to restore the worlds in the between worlds. There was only one thing that Noah really cared about. That was, how to solve the problem of the worlds being destroyed. If Noah slowly repaired the worlds one by one, and then the worlds that were repaired with great difficulty were destroyed by some unknown reason, then this kind of thing, how long would it take to finish? Gaia and Alea clearly had the same idea, so they never showed any stubbornness to let Noah repair the destroyed worlds. Instead, they advised Noah that if he encountered any danger, even if the worlds were to be destroyed, it was fine. Noah itself was more important than those worlds. This was what Gaia and Alea said. Therefore, Noah felt that searching for world fragments in various worlds was, in fact, only secondary to him. Noah's true mission was to solve the problem of the between worlds that was destroying the worlds one by one. If possible, Noah hoped to solve this problem now. However, Gaia and Alea did not show that they had such intentions. Noah could feel it. It was not that Gaia and Alea did not want to solve this problem, but that they were waiting for something. Are they waiting for me to have enough strength? Noah's eyes flashed. Or is it that Gaia and Alea are preparing something crucial? Noah's intuition told him. Maybe it was both. I really don't know when I will be able to live a happy life with Mira and Lisanna. Noah sighed and then thought about the other girls that he had a deep relationship with. Right, there is also Saint Sun. With Saint Sun, Noah had made a promise of 3 years. After 3 years, if Saint Sun still had feelings for him, then Noah would make a good marriage with him. After 3 years, if Saint Sun had found someone he truly loved, then it would be as if this matter had never happened. Thinking about the girl that was special to him, Noah muttered. Since Gaia and Alea are not in a hurry to find the world fragments, then it is time for me to go back and see those kids. Of course, before that, Noah had something he had to do. And that was to continue the battle with Az Dakaha. Also, he had to make a promise with Liana Subble. After dealing with these 2 matters, Noah could finally relax. Also, everyone in the guild is still sleeping on Sky Wolf Island, Noah thought. After I am completely at ease, I will go and see those old friends. Just as Noah made this decision, his phone rang. Noah came back to his senses, took out his phone, and picked up the call. As soon as he picked up the phone, Ganchi Winterhorse's bitter voice came through. King, sect leader Luo Hao has woken up. We can't suppress her, please come quickly. Hearing this, Noah remembered the existence of the sect leader, and the corner of his mouth slowly curled up into a cold smile. Then, let me settle this account properly. After coming out of the Western Heaven Palace, Noah went straight to the hotel. Now, this hotel had been booked by the Official History Compilation Committee. Therefore, other than some staff members who already lived here, the only guests living here were Noah, Yuri, and Hui. Even Ganchi Winterhorse did not live here, so there were many empty rooms. After the incident with the great sage, Heaven's Equal, Noah directly threw Luo Hao into one of the rooms as soon as he returned here. Of course, with Luo Hao's arrogant personality, once she woke up, it was very likely that she would turn the world upside down and blow the surrounding area away. In order to prevent such a disaster from happening, Noah took out an item from his treasury. It was an item from Yggdrasil, and it was a bead the size of a thumb. After using it, the player would not be able to use any skills or magic that consumed MP until the time limit was up. Noah took out the bead and handed it to the Official History Compilation Committee. He asked an expert who was good at adjusting curses to make certain adjustments so that it could have an effect on Eastern inner strength and mana. Then, Noah directly fed the bead into Luo Hao's mouth. In this way, Luo Hao would not be able to use her curse power, use her mana, or even use Chinese inner strength and magic. In this way, even if Luo Hao was the martial arts supremacy, some empty moves would not be a threat at all. After doing all this, Noah directly left the hotel and went to the Western Heaven Palace. Through the passage of the Western Heaven Palace, he went to the secluded world and beat those who liked to play tricks. Now that Luo Hao had woken up, it was time to settle the score with her. When Noah came to the door of Luo Hao's room, a few people had arrived before him. They were the worried Yu Li, the distressed Gan Jin Dong Ma, and the accustomed Lu Yinghua. Lu Yinghua came before Noah went to the secluded world. Now, Master has become Noah's captive. When Master wakes up, I will be wandering outside safe and sound. After that, I will definitely be severely injured by Master. So, Lord Noah, please be sure to take me captive as well. With such a reason, Lu Yinghua cried and begged Noah to take him in. On one hand, Noah felt a stomachache when he thought about what kind of torture this young martial artist had suffered in the past. On the other hand, he felt that this guy was a little pitiful, so he let Lu Yinghua stay. As for Hui Na, because the burden of the god's descent in the morning had not recovered, she was now resting. Seeing Noah walking over from the other end of the corridor, Yu Li, Gan Jin Dong Ma, and Lu Yinghua all showed a bitter expression. Presumably, the three of them were afraid that they would anger the sect leader, so they could only wait outside the door. Under the gaze of the three people, Noah went directly to the door of Luo Hao's room and suddenly pushed open the door. Chapter 1443. The hotel near the Western Heaven Palace was, in fact, just an ordinary hotel. It did not have a jaw-dropping luxurious suite, nor did it have any praiseworthy special service. Everything seemed particularly ordinary. In this way, including Noah, who was known as the king, the room he lived in was just an ordinary guest room of an ordinary size. However, although the room where Luo Hao lived was the same, the layout inside was completely different. The floor was covered with a dark red, luxurious carpet that looked very expensive and soft. The surrounding furniture and furnishings were of very expensive brands and quality. The whole room was decorated in an elegant and quiet style. Even the curtains had been replaced with expensive products that made people feel dazzled. Although the size of the entire room was only average, it suddenly transformed into an extremely luxurious VIP room. These arrangements were all made by the Official History Compilation Committee. Originally, when Noah lived here, Ganchi Winterhorse also suggested that the room where Noah lived be slightly renovated. However, Noah directly rejected it by saying, "It's better to live in a luxurious hotel. Why do you have to take such a big detour?" After all, Noah was not the kind of person who coveted glory and wealth, who liked to enjoy a high-profile life and put on a show. Although he didn't mind making his life better, Noah didn't think it was necessary to do it deliberately. But Luo Hao was different. As a person who lived in seclusion in a nunnery in the mountains, Luo Hao really didn't care about the comfort of the living place. However, this hierarch, who had extremely high self-esteem and was extremely narcissistic, was quite concerned about the show that was in line with his identity. In view of this, before Luo Hao woke up, in order not to anger the king, Ganqi Winterhorse arranged for people to change the layout of this room as quickly as possible under Lu Yinghua's suggestion. In such an elegant and quiet room, Luo Hao, who was wearing a fairy's feather-like Han Chinese costume, was sitting cross-legged on a dark red carpet. His eyes were closed tightly and he was in a state of meditation. That was meditation. The hierarch seemed to be trying to cultivate his internal strength, trying to mobilize the curse power and restore the unparalleled force in the world. Unfortunately, Luo Hao's body did not have a trace of curse energy fluctuation, so she did not succeed. Even so, Luo Hao still had a calm expression as she continued to meditate without any sadness or joy. Frankly speaking, Noah admired Luo Hao quite a bit. Originally, Noah thought that with Luo Hao's character, if he discovered that his peerless martial strength had been sealed, he would definitely make a scene. However, Noah had forgotten. Even if Luo Hao thought highly of himself, even to the point of having excessive self-awareness, he was still a martial arts grandmaster who was invincible in the land of China. For Luo Hao, even if she could not completely put an end to this kind of thing, if she calmed down and wanted to enter a state similar to the unity of heaven and man, a state of peace and tranquility, without sadness or joy, it was simply a piece of cake. Now, Luo Hao, who was calmly sitting cross-legged, looked like an otherworldly fairy, extremely beautiful. He believed that anyone who saw this scene, be it a man or a woman, would be bewitched by Luo Hao's charm. Except for those who knew Luo Hao's unconscious brutality. So, Noah stepped on the extremely soft blanket and slowly walked into the room. Outside the room, Yuli, Ganqi Dongma, and Lu Yinghua all subconsciously held their breaths, not daring to breathe. Under such circumstances, Noah came in front of Luo Hao. Until then, Luo Hao seemed to have noticed that someone was approaching. She slowly opened her eyes, raised her head, and looked at Noah with a pair of beautiful eyes. In those eyes, there was no anger from before, nor was there the arrogance from before. There was only indifference. "What did you do to me?" "As you know, I just temporarily made you unable to use the curse." Noah replied with the same calm expression. Although the God-Slayer has a very strong resistance against curses and the like, it would still work if the curses were to be directly injected into the body. That is why I have given you a tool that can stop the curses from working. Hearing this, Luo Hao was silent. Seeing this, Noah felt a little strange. What? Does the peerless king of Wuxia not have a problem with this treatment? You don't need to provoke me with words, King Noah. Luo Hao closed her eyes and said so. The winner takes all. That's the truth that hasn't changed for thousands of years. Since I lost to you, no matter what kind of treatment I receive, it's only right. I, Luo Zuelian, won't deny this point and lie to myself here. I really admire you. Noah curled his lips and said sarcastically. Undoubtedly, as a Wuxia king, you have a spirit that no one can match, but as a king, you have no self-awareness of your brutality. I really don't know whether to admire you or laugh at you. Your argument is wrong, King Noah. Luo Hao opened her eyes again and retorted. You and I are the existence of any king and overlord since ancient times. It is natural that we enjoy the respect that no ruler can match. But that is only the way of the king, not the way of benevolence. Noah shook his head. As a king, if you have the ability that no one can match, then it is natural that you enjoy the supreme respect. But as a king, you are also a person. In addition to being a king, you are also a strong person. Then, it is natural that you empathize with the weak, protect the weak, understand the weak, and protect the weak. If you don't even understand this, then even if you are a king, you will only be a tyrant that is feared by people, not a benevolent king that is respected by people. Your argument is also wrong, King Noah. Luo Hao shouted as if she expected better from him. You and I, as kings, should also be overlords. We both have the qualifications to represent the will of this world. Since this is the case, our vision should not be limited to people. Instead, it should expand to this world. To you and me, people are definitely not things that should be benevolent. And to the world, we don't even know if the existence of people is beneficial or not. King Noah, your vision is too narrow. Indeed, compared to you, I can't see the people, things, and things of this world in such a detached manner. Noah sighed. But even if I could, I wouldn't want to do it. I don't want to look at people with a high and mighty gaze. Instead, I want to integrate into them, live with them, laugh with them. Only then can I be called a person. I didn't expect that King Noah would be so reluctant to part with worldly things. Luo Hao seemed to be a little disappointed. Wake up, King Noah. As a senior of the King Dao, I advise you that everything in the mortal world can cause people to fall. If you are trapped in this world of karma, you won't be able to achieve the Dao. I've said that I've never wanted to be an existence that transcends worldly things. Noah curled his lips and smiled. As long as I can protect my companions and the people, things, and things I love, that's enough for me. Is this your Dao? Luo Hao pondered for a moment and then nodded. Fine, even if we are both kings, we don't necessarily have to walk the same path. On the path of kings, I chose the Tao of tyranny and you chose the Tao of benevolence. As the saying goes, people with different Taos can't make plans together. I don't have the qualifications to criticize your Tao. Luo Hao sighed faintly after saying this. Moreover, I've already lost to you on the path of the king. I don't have the qualifications to comment on the path you've chosen. The winner is the king while the loser is in the wrong. I'm just a trophy on your path of the king. After saying this, Luo Hao seemed to have accepted her fate and calmly spoke. I, Luo Hao, admit your victory. King Noah, although our Daos are different, I am still the loser. Since that's the case, I have no complaints about you taking me as your concubine. When these words resounded through the entire space, the heavy atmosphere in the air suddenly became strange. At this moment, everyone was stunned. Yuli was stunned. Yuli was stunned. Lu Yinhua was stunned. Even Noah's mouth was slightly agape. He was stunned. Chapter 1444. Silence. A deathly silence ensued. Regardless of what Yoli, Ganji Dongma, and Lu Yinghua were doing now, Noah stared at Luo Hao, who was sitting cross-legged on the blanket, and couldn't make a sound for a long time. The atmosphere in the air suddenly became extremely strange. In such a situation, Luo Hao, who didn't have any self-awareness and was extremely arrogant, felt a little uncomfortable and stared at Noah. King Noah, why are you looking at me with such eyes? Do you think there's something wrong with what Luo Hao said? What was wrong with what she said? Wasn't that obvious? But Luo Hao had a natural look, as if she had said something natural, which made others feel that she didn't seem to have said anything wrong. However, if one carefully listened to Luo Hao's words just now, they would understand. Among them, there was a huge problem. Seeing that Luo Hao still had no self-awareness, Noah rubbed his temples. Well, it seems that if I don't say it directly, you won't understand. After speaking, Noah looked straight at Luo Hao and spoke bluntly. When did I say I wanted to take you as a concubine? Yoli, Ganji Dongma, and Lu Yinghua nodded involuntarily. Luo Hao didn't wake up for long. Before Luo Hao woke up, Noah was undoubtedly in seclusion, beating the 3 Japanese elders who claimed to be in seclusion but still did a lot of great things. He didn't come back until just now. Then, when did Noah say that he wanted to take Luo Hao as a concubine, which was so shocking that people's jaws dropped? The most important thing was that Luo Hao, the leader of the Wulian Alliance of China, who had the best martial arts skills in the world, was going to be Noah's concubine? This must be a joke, right? At least, among the people present, except for Luo Hao, everyone else thought so. including Noah. But Luo Hao frowned. No one knew what she thought of, and she glared at Noah. King Noah, you know what's good for you. The sudden rebuke stunned Noah. I, Luo Hao, am the supreme of China's martial arts world. Although I've been defeated by you, I'm still an indomitable king. Now, I'm willing to be your concubine and not your first wife. This is the biggest concession I can make. Luo Hao shouted. Don't tell me you're not even going to give me a proper status. Don't you realize that there's a very important question in your words? Noah couldn't help but raise his voice a little. Let's not talk about being a concubine or having a proper status. First of all, when did I say that I wanted you to be my woman? These words caused Luo Hao to be stunned at first. Then, she seemed to have understood something and looked at Noah with disdain. King Noah, do you think I'm a brute who only knows how to use force? Do you think I don't understand why you're keeping me, Luo Hao? Oh. Noah was angered by Luo Hao's disdainful gaze and asked. Then why don't you tell me why I'm keeping you? Since ancient times, as kings, victory and defeat on the battlefield are decided fairly. The defeated side can only be dealt with by the victorious side, Luo Hao said to Noah. You've captured me, but you don't intend to behead me in public to show your might as a king. That must be because you want to follow the example of the victorious country in ancient times and marry a member of the royal family of the defeated country as a concubine to show your high status, right? It was as Luo Hao said. In ancient times in China, when two countries were at war, there were generally two ways for the victorious country to deal with the defeated country. One was to directly behead the emperor and take in the territory of the defeated country to expand the scope of the country. The other was to take in the defeated country as a subordinate country. The emperor of the victorious country would marry the unmarried princess with the highest status in the royal family of the subordinate country as a concubine to show his status. Now, Luo Hao directly applied this old concept to the current situation. The difference between the two was so big that there was no end to it. Although Noah and Luo Hao were both known as kings, Noah was not an emperor and did not have a territory. He was just an individual. Even if Luo Hao ruled the world in China and had many followers and gangs as subordinates, Noah defeated Luo Hao. There was no need for him to be involved in the above two situations, right? For example, directly beheading the emperor and taking in the territory of the defeated country to expand the scope of the country. Firstly, Noah did not want to become an emperor and dominate the world. Secondly, he did not want to take in any territory. Why would he do that? Another example was to take in the defeated country as a subordinate country. The emperor of the victorious country would marry the unmarried princess with the highest status in the royal family of the subordinate country as a concubine to show his status. That was even more unnecessary, right? After all, Noah did not need to show his status, nor did he want to carry out any promotion for his status. Why would he need to go to such an extent? As a result, Luo Hao took her own opinion for granted as Noah's idea. She thought that Noah did not behead her in public and take the land she ruled into his rule because he wanted to marry her to show his status. Should it really be said that she was worthy of being the wuxia king who felt so good about herself that she made people speechless? Noah choked directly. For a while, he didn't know what to say. Yoli, Ganji Dongma, and Lu Yinghua looked at each other. One was at a loss, and the other smiled bitterly. Only Lu Yinghua said with some emotion. It's really like what Master would think. From Luo Hao's point of view, it was estimated that this sect leader thought that if Noah intended to show his status by marrying a person of high status, then there would be no second candidate except herself. In the sect leader's heart, which girl had a higher status than her? Therefore, Noah could only be planning to marry Luo Hao, who was the wuxia king, Luo Zuelian. This was the thought in the sect leader's heart. However, this idea, in the eyes of others, was extremely shocking. Seeing Noah's speechless performance, Luo Hao's brows furrowed deeper and deeper. King Noah, do you really intend to not even give me, Luo Zuelian, the status of a concubine, and humiliate me to this extent? Even a king has to know his limits. Noah was really angered by Luo Hao. It had to be said that Luo Hao's ability was indeed great to be able to make Noah angry repeatedly like this. One had to know that because of all the experiences he had been through, even though Noah didn't lose his temper, he wasn't that easily angered. However, Luo Hao always had a way to easily anger Noah with all kinds of willful and reckless behavior and self-centered statements. From this point of view, Luo Hao did something that no one had ever been able to do so far. Therefore, Noah was so angry that he laughed. "Do you really want me to take you as a concubine?" Luo Hao was slightly stunned. Under such circumstances, Noah walked up to Luo Hao in front of everyone present, bent down, stretched out his hand, and lifted Luo Hao's chin, and said coldly, "Okay, then I'll fulfill your wish. Come to my room tonight." Everyone fell silent again. Luo Hao's beautiful face finally froze. Yoli, Ganqi Dongma, and Luinghua's expressions became extremely interesting. "King Noah. You." Luo Hao did not know whether it was because of anger or shame, but her beautiful face turned slightly red. "Don't tell me, you want me to do the ceremony with you under the condition that you haven't officially married me?" The ceremony of the ceremony meant to consummate the marriage. "What? Do you have a problem with that?" Noah sneered. "Don't tell me you want me to marry you in the manner of a palanquin carried by 8 people in China, and then do the deed of husband and wife after I marry you? Unfortunately, I'm not interested in using that nostalgic method." Noah's voice echoed throughout the entire space. "You, come to my room tonight. We'll talk about the status later." There was only one meaning in his words. Noah planned to get in the car first and buy the ticket later. You. Luo Hao finally could not help but blush. Seeing this, Noah said sarcastically, "So, the dignified Wuxia king of the land of China does not even have the courage to enter the room of your husband?" This provocation, without any surprise, succeeded. Don't underestimate me, King Noah," Luo Hao said angrily. "In that case, I'll show you my courage." In other words, Luo Hao agreed. Such a scene made Yoli, Ganqi Dongma, and Lu Yinghua, who were watching from the side, completely lose their ability to speak. They were stunned and did not recover for a long time. It was not long before the sky turned dark. Chapter 1445. Night gradually fell. A full moon hung high in the dark starry sky, dotted with many stars, forming a picturesque scene. Although it wasn't as beautiful as the starry sky in the courtyard, it was rare to see so many stars in modern times. However, in the starry sky dotted with the full moon and stars, apart from the stars, there were also dark clouds. The dark clouds drifted with the wind and covered the stars from time to time, gradually moving in the direction of the full moon. It seemed that sooner or later, the full moon would be covered by the dark clouds. But at least for now, the starry sky was still very bright and beautiful. Presumably, it would arouse the interest of many people and make them admire it. Noah was also looking at the starry sky. In one of the rooms on the highest floor of the hotel, Noah looked at the full moon and stars in the night sky through the window as he spoke with a wry smile. Impulse is the devil. Although he didn't want to admit it. Only Noah himself knew what kind of mood he was in now. "I feel a little restless." Frankly speaking, Noah was no longer a virgin. In terms of experience alone, Noah, who had 2 delicate fiancées, would be able to enjoy the service of Mira and Lisana almost every time he returned to the guild. Just the thought of it was enough to captivate him. Logically speaking, with this kind of experience, Noah should be more at ease. But now, Noah was indeed a little restless. If it was under normal circumstances, Noah wouldn't be like this. However, instead of saying that the situation back then was normal, it was more appropriate to say that it was the most abnormal development. Suddenly, he was asked to take in a concubine. Suddenly, it developed to the point where he needed to spend a long night with someone whom he had barely had any contact with and whom he had only met a few times. Let alone having a heart-to-heart talk and understanding each other, even Noah could not help but feel speechless at the development of the situation. At that time, under the situation that he was angered by Luo Hao, Noah made such a request in revenge, intending to dampen Luo Hao's spirit. Who knew that Luo Hao would be so easily provoked and jump into the pit? In this way, Noah couldn't back down. No matter what, although this result was all kinds of scams, if Noah backed down, he might have been directly choked by Luo Hao. Anyway, I'm not the one who's at a disadvantage. Noah couldn't help but laugh bitterly when he said such an excuse that all men in the world would find. If Mira and Lisanna find out, they'll definitely be angry, right? Of course, as long as Noah was willing to spend time coaxing them, Mira and Lisanna would definitely forgive Noah. Not long after he confirmed his relationship with Mira and Lisanna, Noah told his two fiancées about the Elysium. In fact, before they confirmed their relationship, Mira and Lisanna could vaguely guess that Noah had a concern in his heart based on his words and actions. After confirming their relationship, Noah told Mira and Lisanna about the Elysian prince. Of course, Noah only mentioned the Elysian prince. He didn't reveal the fact that the Elysian prince was in existence from another world. Noah felt that there was no need to reveal anything about the world between worlds at the moment. Because of this, Mira and Lisanna knew about the existence of the Elysian child, as well as the 3-year agreement between Noah and the Elysian child. These two delicate fiancés had said that no matter what the final result was, as long as the Holy Son fulfilled this 3-year promise, they would choose to accept. However, because of this, Noah was controlled by his two fiancés for a period of time with all kinds of resentment. If Noah really did all kinds of things with Luo Hao tonight, Noah definitely wouldn't hide it from Mira and Lisanna when they returned. This was also Mira and Lisanna's request. Compared to knowing that you have another lover outside, I feel that it's more heartbreaking to have you hide this from us. So, brother Noah, no matter what, you're not allowed to hide it from us. These were the words that the two delicate fiancés said with smiles on their faces after hearing about the Elysian prince. That was the first time Noah felt fear, and he immediately nodded his head like he was pounding garlic. Therefore, Noah wouldn't hide this kind of thing from them. Besides, Mira and Lisanna were the kind of girls who weren't smart and were instead a little stupid, but their intuition was frighteningly good. If Noah really did have sex with another woman, even if he took 100 baths and shed his skin, those two girls would probably smell something out with their terrifying intuition. In Lisanna's words, it would be, don't underestimate the person who sleeps next to you. No matter what, she is the person who is closest to you even when sleeping. That was why it was said that women were an extremely inconceivable creature at all times. However, while Noah felt that it was funny, he was also very touched. At the very least, it proved that Mira and Lisanna had invested a lot of feelings in Noah. Otherwise, they wouldn't accept their fiancé to be in such a state. Although, if you're angry, you'll definitely be angry. Just as Noah was thinking about this, a voice entered his ears. I've already gotten so close to you, but you actually didn't notice. King Noah, sometimes I really wonder if you're strong or immature. This voice directly woke Noah up. Immediately, Noah turned his head almost reflexively. Then, the scene that was imprinted into Noah's eyes made Noah's heart suddenly skip a beat. The person who came was naturally Luo Hao. Luo Hao, who had appeared in Noah's room at some point, was wearing a bathrobe, but it was very thin, as if it was woven with a piece of translucent cloth. Through this thin garment, Noah could even very clearly see the color of Luo Hao's fair skin that was covered by the thin garment. The curves from her waist to her buttocks were exceptionally clear and very attractive. If Luo Hao hadn't hugged her arms in front of her body, her full and round breasts would have been clearly seen. Looking at Luo Hao like this, even Noah had a dry mouth. Originally, Luo Hao had a devastatingly beautiful appearance. In terms of appearance, among all the people Noah had seen in his life, Luo Hao was a peerless beauty who wouldn't lose to anyone. Moreover, Luo Hao's figure was really not bad. Although she wasn't very tall and her figure was very slender, the ratio of her three measurements was extremely perfect, making Luo Hao's limbs look so exquisite and attractive. In addition, the king of Wuxia, who usually had a majestic performance, was now showing a sense of shyness. That contrast really made people feel a rush of blood. Presumably, in Luo Hao's country, such an existence should be the so-called femme fatale level. She was a beauty who could make the emperor forget about politics and immerse himself in her gentleness and beauty. Even if he was angered by Luo Hao several times, Noah, who didn't have a good impression of Luo Hao, was a little surprised. This was enough to prove this point. Seeing Noah staring at her, Luo Hao's hands in front of her body tightened slightly, and the skin under the thin garment seemed to be a little red. Noah King, don't misunderstand. The reason why I used divine feet to enter your room was because I didn't want the servants to see me in this state. I didn't want to assassinate you, so you can rest assured. So, please look away from that sharp gaze of yours. Luo Hao thought that Noah was looking at her intently because he suspected that Luo Hao wanted to harm him, so he was secretly vigilant. However, Noah really didn't stare at Luo Hao because of this. Originally, Noah was still hesitant to have such a relationship with Luo Hao. But now, the hesitation in Noah's heart has disappeared little by little with Luo Hao's appearance in this dress. This made Noah feel sad that he was still a man, and at the same time, he smiled bitterly at Luo Hao's words for the third time. Could it be that you've never thought that I'm just mesmerized by your posture? This sentence made Luo Hao startled at first, then she raised her eyebrows slightly. I almost forgot that you are a person who is attracted by worldly things. I thought you were a king who wouldn't waver even in the face of beauty. You think too highly of me. Noah shook his head. I said that I am a person, and a man at that. I won't waver in the face of any beauty. That's all fake. With such a sentence, Noah raised his head with a faint smile, looked at Luo Hao, and said, It's just that I didn't expect that you would come in this dress. It seems that you are really prepared. Don't think that only you men can keep your word. I, Luo Hao, will never go back on my word. Luo Hao lowered her head, and her delicate body trembled slightly with her hands around it. So, King Noah, if you don't intend to deprive me of my last trace of dignity, then don't make me take the initiative to ask for your favor, okay? This sentence finally ignited the flame in Noah's heart. At that moment, Noah stepped forward and hugged Luo Hao into his arms. The light went out unknowingly. A thin robe fluttered to the ground, causing the temperature in the air to become somewhat hot. Tonight was destined to be long. Chapter 1446. The next day. After waking up from his sleep, Noah's hazy consciousness began to wake up. Because an indescribable fragrance rushed into the tip of Noah's nose along with the sound of breathing, causing Noah's consciousness to wake up in an instant. Immediately afterward, Noah felt an extremely soft and elastic delicate body snuggling tightly against him. This feeling made Noah's gradually sobering head suddenly surge into the extremely wonderful memory of last night. It was indeed quite wonderful. Let the peerless, self-respecting Chinese Wulian Alliance master gasp for breath under his body. The taste was simply indescribable. Recalling the wonderful taste of last night, Noah's expression became somewhat comfortable. He lowered his head and looked at his arms. In Noah's arms, Luo Hao, who was naked and covered with only a sheet, was lying there, her red lips unconsciously moaning. Her cheeks were that seductive crimson. Her skin was also a little flushed. Luo Hao's long hair that was as black as the night was like a waterfall that hung down along her slender and beautiful waist. It was wet from the sweat that covered Luo Hao's curvaceous back, making her look exceptionally lovable. Looking at Luo Hao, who was sleeping very peacefully like a little girl, Noah stroked her smooth and slender back and couldn't help but sigh. Undoubtedly, it's so cute. Noah admitted that he did admire Luo Hao's spirit and magnanimity in Wuxia. However, this Wuxia king did have some shortcomings in terms of personality. His self-awareness was too high, and he was extremely lacking in self-awareness. In the eyes of others, this was undoubtedly a tyrant who was difficult to serve. Noah also had such an idea yesterday. However, now, Noah no longer had a bad impression of Luo Hao's personality, but some helplessness. It's not impossible to be self-centered, but if you're too willful, otherwise, how can you get along with ordinary people in the future? At the very least, this kind of self-centered attitude must be looked at. If she had a high and mighty attitude in front of Noah's companions, then Noah couldn't stand it. I have to think of a way to teach this girl a lesson. With this thought in mind, Noah's hand unconsciously slid across Luo Hao's extremely elastic and smooth back, causing Luo Hao's eyelids to tremble slightly. Soon after, she slowly opened her eyes. That pair of eyes no longer had their previous majesty and valiance, and had been replaced by a watery gentleness. Regardless of whether it was the past, present, or future, the only person who could make Luo Hao reveal such an attitude was Noah. As if sensing that Luo Hao had woken up, Noah snapped out of his daze and looked at the person in his arms. "Are you awake?" Hearing Noah's voice, Luo Hao was first stunned for a moment before coming back to her senses. Looking at Noah, who was looking at her with a smile that was not a smile, and then looking at the two of them hugging each other tightly, Luo Hao finally recalled what happened last night, and her pretty face turned slightly red. "So that's how it is. I, Luo Hao, have finally committed myself to someone else and have a place that belongs to me?" Luo Hao, who said such words with a slightly red face, no longer had the arrogance and majesty of the past. She only had the shyness of an ordinary girl. Compared to the past, it could be said that it was a shocking contrast. Noah couldn't help but feel that it was a little cute. The hand that was holding Luo Hao tightened a little, and he kissed her red lips. Ugh, Luo Hao's eyes widened in surprise, and then more moisture appeared in her eyes. Even her delicate body seemed to have lost its strength and softened. By the time she reacted, Luo Hao discovered that her teeth had been pried open, and her tongue had been captured by Noah and was being tasted with relish. This made Luo Hao's body even more powerless. However, Luo Hao still resisted the weakness of her body. With a red face, she tried her best to push Noah away. After panting a few times, she glared at Noah. Seeing this, Noah was a little curious. "Now that things have come to this, what are you still dissatisfied with? Are you doubting my tolerance again?" Luo Hao said somewhat angrily. "I've already said it many times. Since Luo Zuelian has promised to become your concubine, then I won't have any complaints. If you doubt me again, then it's really too rude." "Is that so?" Noah said as he hugged Luo Hao tightly. "If that's the case, then why are you still rejecting my love for you? It's an honor as a wife to be able to receive love from my husband." Luo Hao's pretty face was slightly red, but she looked at Noah very seriously. "However, my husband, you're still an unparalleled ruler. You can't immerse yourself in the land of gentleness. Since you and I are already husband and wife, then we should treat each other with respect. You can't become a stumbling block on your king's path because of me. Please remember this." Hearing this, Noah was a little helpless. It really sounds like something Luo Hao would say. Although this king of Wuxia had a side that was arbitrary and had no self-awareness, no matter what, she was still a Wuxia grandmaster and a traditional woman who had been standing in the land of China for a full 200 years. Even if there were some problems with the concept of being a king, it was not like she did not have the self-awareness of being a woman. Now Luo Hao is like a woman who will silently give and support behind a man. With Luo Hao's view of the identity of a king, it seems natural that she would say such words. Undoubtedly, she has a strong sense of being a Wuxia king and a woman, but why doesn't she have the slightest understanding of being a tyrant? Noah felt incredulous while hugging Luo Hao tightly and said so. "Listen to me carefully. If a man will let the woman who loves him become a stumbling block, then this man has already failed. Only if he can handle this kind of thing well can he stand out. Do you think I'm the kind of useless person who will be reluctant to leave the land of gentleness and ignore the court? But you have an excessive obsession with worldly things. Luo Hao shook her head. I'm worried that you will sink deeper and deeper because of this and eventually can't extricate yourself. Isn't there a saying in your country that you can only make a name for yourself after going through a disaster? Noah retorted. If I stay out of it from the beginning, it's just an escape. For me, no matter what it is, I have to experience it. Only then can I see myself, others, and even everything clearly. Well, my husband also has his own ideas. Luo Hao said helplessly. In that case, as a married woman, I shouldn't be an obstacle to you. Don't keep saying that you're an obstacle. Noah curled his lips. In words you can understand, I think, whether it's a person or a king, as long as you can do it with a clear conscience to the world, with a clear conscience to your parents, and with a clear conscience to the world, then you are qualified no matter what. A clear conscience. A clear conscience to his parents. Even more so, a clear conscience to the world. Luo Hao suddenly muttered, and then, she cast a praising gaze towards Noah. It seems that I was confused. Since I thought that my husband would fall because of worldly matters, since my husband has such self-awareness, then I am relieved. After he finished speaking, Luo Hao got up from Noah's embrace, and before Noah could react, he broke free from the blanket and got off the bed. Just like that, the peerless beauty, who was capable of causing the downfall of a nation, exposed herself to Noah's line of sight. Immediately after, her gentle and beautiful body suddenly turned around. As Luo Hao spun around in a circle, a set of feather-like Han clothes suddenly appeared on her body, covering her incomparably alluring body, causing the hem of her skirt to flutter lightly. That scene was simply like that of a fairy. Since Luo Zuelian has already become a married woman, then she should no longer appear in public in front of the world. Luo Hao's eyes seemed to linger on Noah's body as they flashed with extraordinary splendor. My husband, Luo Zuelian, is going back to Mount Lu. Although I am only your concubine, I hope you don't forget that in this life, you are the only one who can make Luo Zuelian willingly submit herself to you. Farewell. With that, Luo Hao waved her long sleeves, and beautiful petals flashed around her, covering her entire body as she disappeared from the spot. Until she left, Luo Hao was worthy of her status as a king, and she left without the slightest bit of reluctance. Looking at the direction Luo Hao disappeared in, Noah couldn't help but say this with some resentment. Undoubtedly, I want to do it again. Chapter 1447. In any case, although Luo Hao was extremely lacking in self-awareness, she did not hesitate in the slightest. Undoubtedly, she had spent the night with Noah, but when she left, she did not have a trace of nostalgia. She did not give the feeling of being heartless, but left very valiantly. Since even the girl was not so hesitant, Noah, as a man, if he still showed a hesitant look, it would be really inappropriate. So, although it was a little regretful, Noah still got rid of the association in his heart, got up, dressed neatly, and walked in the direction of the door. The great sage, Heaven's equal, had been dealt with. However, that did not mean that everything had been solved. Because of the appearance of the great sage, Heaven's equal, Guinevere came to the island. With the keen sense of the god ancestor as the demon queen, perhaps the other party had already noticed that the last king was in this country. That was hard to say. Under such circumstances, Guinevere would cause some commotion sooner or later. Noah had a grudge with Guinevere. In addition, when he planned to stay in this country, Noah had already made a promise to the Official History Compilation Committee that he would help solve the problems that ordinary humans could not solve. For public or private reasons, Noah had to temporarily entangle with Guinevere. Moreover, Guinevere was definitely not the only one who came to this country. Noah believed that the Black Prince who had been watching Guinevere must have also come to this country. With Yarek's personality, Noah felt that the guy must be hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to attack at any time. As for the target of the attack, it was either Noah who held the Holy Grail, or Guinevere who had a grudge with him. Therefore, at first glance, it seemed that everything had been solved, but it was just the calm before the storm. The appearance of the great sage, heaven's equal, was just a prelude. The real turmoil was about to begin. For this reason, Noah also needed to make some preparations. There was only a short day left before the end of the adaptation time. In order to cope with the growing turmoil, Noah believed that the power of authority was absolutely necessary. If he couldn't use his authority, then even Noah would be in danger in the upcoming chaos. Therefore, Noah had to make some preparations on the last day before the end of the authority's adaptation period. First of all, let the official history committee investigate the whereabouts of Guinevere and Yerek. With this thought in mind, Noah walked to the front of the door and extended his hand. Just as he was about to open the door, a conversation suddenly sounded from outside the door. "All right, Yoli, let's hurry inside." Now. Of course it's now. Don't you usually bring breakfast to His Majesty at this time and eat with His Majesty? But Mr. Noah and Lord Hierarch might still be resting. That's true. If we barge in like this, we might see some things that children shouldn't see, something that a child shouldn't see. It's that, the scene where His Majesty and the sect leader make love. Don't be so blunt. You're too shameless. Listening to the shy and flustered conversation between the two, Noah couldn't help but blush. It couldn't be helped. Yesterday, when Noah angrily asked Luo how to come over at night to serve him, Yoli, Ganji Dongma, and Luinghua were also present. In other words, the fact that Noah and Luo Hao had a night of intercourse was no secret. At that time, Noah didn't think much about it. Under Luo Hao's provocation, he said those words regardless of the fact that there was a third party present. Now, thinking about it carefully, in front of so many people, asking Luo how to come over at night to serve him was simply teaching a child a bad lesson. With Yoli's innocence, she was probably in a mess now, right? And listening to Huey's shy voice, it seemed that even this girl who grew up in nature was not very comfortable with love between men and women. Noah could now imagine what kind of impression he had left in the hearts of the two pure girls. When he thought of the two girls who were a few years younger than him outside the door, hesitating whether to come in or not, in case they saw something they shouldn't see, Noah felt awkward. Fortunately, Luo Hao had already left. Otherwise, just now, if Noah was really in the mood and dragged Luo Hao for a while in broad daylight, and then attracted Yoli and Hui Na's eavesdropping, it would make people want to die. At that moment, Noah suppressed the awkwardness in his heart, pretended to be calm, and directly opened the door. Ah! The next moment, two exclamations sounded at the same time. Noah, Yoli, and Hui Na's gazes instantly met. The atmosphere suddenly became extremely awkward. Yoli and Huey's pretty faces turned red in the blink of an eye. No. Mr. Noah. Yoli's face was red as she shouted in a panic. You. Are you already up? Yes, I'm up. Noah laughed dryly. Speaking of which, when will I get up, don't you already know? But. Hui Na's face was also red as she smiled shyly. Today, the king is not the only one in the king's room. Hui Na's words made Yoli lower her head with a red face. Then, she immediately raised her head and glared at Noah. You really don't have the self-awareness of a king. How dare you act so recklessly and completely disregard the impact of your words and actions on the people around you? You really have no sense of shame. What do you mean by no sense of shame? Noah retorted. Isn't it normal for a man and a woman to make love? Please don't be so straightforward. Yoli said shyly. Even if you want to do that kind of thing, please look at the situation. Is there a problem with the situation? Noah was amused and couldn't help but tease. Isn't this a hotel? Ah. Hui Na said in surprise. So this is a hotel for that kind of purpose? Of course not. Yoli vetoed loudly. His gaze on Noah became fiercer and fiercer. Anyway, you are really too impure. You better reflect on yourself. This sentence was immediately met with a sarcastic voice. You actually want the Demon King, the God Slayer, to reflect on himself. You should at least know what's good for you. Or do you really dare to question the Demon King's decision? Following this sentence, Lu Yinghua's figure slowly walked over from the other end of the corridor. Once he appeared, Lu Yinghua looked at Noah with an extremely respectful gaze. He clasped his fist and knelt down on one knee. With an unprecedentedly grand etiquette, he bowed deeply to Noah. Grandmaster, please accept a bow from your disciple, Lu Yinghua. Grandmaster? Noah was stunned. In response, Lu Yinghua maintained his kneeling posture and said matter-of-factly. Since my master is Sir's concubine, then Sir is naturally my grandmaster. Noah did not know what to say for a while. Then, Lu Yinghua raised his head and said to Noah with a rare flattering smile. Just now, my master used the secret method of transmitting sound to me from 1,000 miles away. She told me that I must announce to the world that the leader of the martial arts world in the land of China has a good relationship with my grandmaster. I must let the world know that my grandmaster is the real king who can subdue the wuxia king who is the best in martial arts in the world. I must strengthen my grandmaster's reputation. Announce to the world. Noah was really shocked. Luo Hao actually gave such an order. Yes, now, your disciple is also preparing to follow my master's footsteps. When the time comes, I will naturally announce to the world the grandmaster's power. Lu Yinghua nodded respectfully. Then, your disciple will take his leave. After saying this, Lu Yinghua was like a supporting actor leaving the stage. In order not to hinder Noah, the protagonist, in a flash, he disappeared. He left very quickly. Wait. Noah did not have time to stop him at all. Lu Yinghua had already left. Noah could already foresee it. How shocked and surprised would the so-called world be when they learned of this news? Why did this kind of thing have to be announced to the world? Noah could only look in the direction where Lu Yinghua disappeared with the corner of his mouth twitching. Then, he looked at Yoli and Huina who were looking at him with shame and admiration. He was speechless for a long time. Chapter 1448. Is that so? Noah scratched his cheek. At this moment, an elegant voice sounded softly and slowly. Noah was stunned for a moment, and then he exclaimed in surprise. As this voice sounded, a noble woman slowly appeared outside the door. An eerie silence filled the air. Moreover, Yoli also used a spell to help Huina recover, so one day is enough. Compared to the sudden destruction and disaster brought by a sudden impulse, this kind of God's unfolding was just a small matter for those who were afraid of the Demon King, right? Don't worry, Yoli. This time, Huina was asked by grandfather to be the king's follower. Based on this, grandfather should be willing to lend his power to Huina. She was a very beautiful Caucasian woman with long blonde hair that reached her waist. She was wearing elegant clothes and exuded an elegant temperament. If Huina wants to use the secret technique of inviting God to descend, she must often go to the mountains to cultivate, right? Such a sentence made Yoli and Huina look at each other, and then they smiled bitterly. There was no other way. Who would have expected such an unfolding? Thinking of this, Noah felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. He had to find a topic to divert her attention. Moreover, before going down the mountain, the people from the committee said that Huina may need to work for a long time. Therefore, Huina used the Qingqiu courtyard's spiritual spring to cleanse her body in advance so that her body is full of spiritual energy for a long time. Huina looked carefree. The burden of borrowing God's power should not be small. Will it take only one day to fully recover? It's not enough to just rest, but Huina used a spell to help her recover, Huina said. In the battle with Lu Yinghua, Huina used the secret technique of inviting God to descend, to borrow God's power, so it put a great burden on her body. If Noah was just an ordinary person, Yoli and Huina would have looked at Noah with strange eyes. Now, A day had passed, and he didn't know how Hui Na's condition was recovering. Alright, it's my fault. It's indeed meaningless to compare humans with gods. Huina is already quite amazing among humans. I know that. To humans, that's already quite an impressive achievement. To us, Hui Na is also quite an impressive person. Please don't compare Hui Na to the demon kings who can fight against the gods. And that was the beginning of this atmosphere. Looking at Noah's repentant look, Yoli and Hui Na couldn't help but smile as if they were amused. If I continue to be silent like this, I'm sure I'll be the one who can't stand it first, right? Seeing this woman, Yoli and Hui Na were stunned. By the way, Hui Na, is there anything wrong with your body? Noah was suddenly speechless. He could only raise his hand in surrender. Unfortunately, Noah was a god slayer, a demon king who was not surprising in the eyes of others no matter what he did. However, even if her body recovers, can Hui Na still continue to use the secret technique of invite God to descend? Yoli's attention was also successfully diverted. She finally stopped blushing and looked at Hui Na rather worriedly. However, no matter what, for the whole night yesterday, a man and a woman were having an affair in this room. That was something that couldn't be denied. Anyway, Noah didn't think that it would develop like this until last night. Hui Na couldn't even stay in the human city for more than a month. It was very difficult. The reason why Hui Na grew up in the mountains from a young age was because of this. That's good. Yoli was relieved. Although Hui Na had only been in the human city for a few days, as Noah's follower, it was entirely possible that the head of the witches wouldn't be able to return to the mountains within a month. After a month, the beautiful girl who was known as the best lady in Europe and was respectfully called the princess finally appeared in front of Noah again. At that moment, Noah looked at Hui Na and asked in a casual manner, avoiding the topic. No. Seeing the two witches blushing and not daring to look at the surrounding scene, worried that they would see something bad while silently eating, Noah also sighed in his heart. For the king, the power that Hui Na borrowed is naturally nothing. Hui Na said in a rare tone of annoyance. Understanding Yoli's concern, Hui Na explained in a cheerful tone. I haven't seen you for a month. I thought you were hiding somewhere. It turns out that you are here. You even killed the disobedient great sage equaling heaven. You are indeed the demon king who can even take down 3 of his kind in one fell swoop. After all, the divine power that Hui Na can borrow is only a few 10,000ths of this level of power. Alice? Noah curled his lips a little. It's inappropriate to compare humans with the god-slaying demon king from any aspect, even if he's one of the best among humans. From this point of view, Lord Noah has recently stirred up an incident that isn't inferior to the god-slaying demon king's name. That is to say, even if he stayed in the human city for more than a month, Susanoo would not lend his power to Hui Na just because her body and mind were stained with filth. It should be said that the inexplicable one was actually Luo Hao. Physical condition. Hui Na was slightly startled, and then her attention was successfully diverted by Noah. She answered with an innocent smile. The reason for this atmosphere was naturally Noah. However, for Noah, this atmosphere was a bit unbearable. As a result, as soon as she came back yesterday, Hui Na went back to her room to rest. However, this level of power has already made Hui Na the leader of the witches in this country, and even comparable to the mythological beast. Yoli looked at Noah with a reproachful look. It's no problem, Your Highness, Hui Na did not suffer any injuries. It's just that she was too tired because of using God's descent. She had a good rest yesterday, and now she is completely recovered. It's so troublesome to use the power of that pretentious god. It's really hard on Hui Na. To borrow the power of God with the body of a mortal, the conditions required were not only talent, but also to keep the body and mind clean, otherwise, they would not be able to exert their power. For this reason, Hui Na went deep into the mountain since she was a child to keep her body and mind pure and clean, so that her internal organs could breathe the air of the deep mountains and valleys, so that her spirit could reach the realm of six senses and not let her body be stained with the filth and dirt of the secular world. Who made the relationship between Noah and Luo Hao so inexplicable? After Lu Yinghua left, Noah invited Yoli and Hui Na into his room in a rather awkward atmosphere and began to eat breakfast. If it wasn't for Luo Hao's wild imagination, thinking that Noah did not kill her in order to take her as a concubine, and provoking Noah would not have asked Luo Hao to come over and serve him in the bed when he was provoked. As a result, one was impulsive because of anger, and the other was full of self-righteousness and imagination, leading to the inexplicable relationship between the two under the circumstances of taking advantage of the situation. It's been a long time, Lord Noah. Alice saluted with an action that no one could find fault with, but a pair of watery eyes contained a little smile and playfulness. In the room, Noah, Yoli, and Hui Na sat in a triangular position, each silently eating the food on the tray in front of them, falling into an indescribable depression. In other words, as long as Hui Na stayed in a human city for more than a month, her body and mind would be stained with the filth of the secular world, and she would no longer be able to invite God to descend. As a pure girl, Yoli and Hui Na blushed and lowered their heads to eat. They deliberately did not look around, worried that they would see something unsightly. That was understandable. Even Noah just took advantage of the situation and inexplicably had a relationship with Luo Hao. In the eyes of others, it was even more inexplicable. Chapter 1449. In the room, Yoli took a teapot and poured steaming tea into the teacups in front of Noah and Alice, who were sitting opposite each other. Then she obediently stepped aside and stood behind Noah with Hui Na. Alice, who was sitting opposite Noah, looked at Yoli and Hui Na with curious eyes and spoke to Noah. Are these two the witches Yuan of the Japanese spell world? Are they your new entourage? When Alice mentioned them, Yoli couldn't help but be a little nervous. Even Hui Na's expression was a little subtle. Alice Louise of Napao. This noble lady, who was known as the best lady in Europe and had the title of princess, was not just famous. Not only did she become the Speaker of the Sage Parliament that specialized in studying the God Slayer when she was only 16 years old, but she also once joined hands with the Paladin, Paul Brantley of the Copper Black Cross, to fight against the Black Prince Yarek, who was a God Slayer and had repeatedly repelled the Demon King in fields other than force. Coupled with the beautiful appearance and elegant temperament that seemed to have come out of the Middle Ages, if there was a ranking in the world that integrated the advantages of women in all aspects, then this girl would definitely be the first on this ranking. Therefore, in terms of fame alone, Alice was not under the Demon King who killed the god. Her beauty and wisdom were things that people in the magic and curse world all over the world knew. Being noticed by such a big shot, Yoli, a simple girl, was inevitably a little nervous, and Hui Na's performance was a little strange. Only Noah knew that the fame was actually just an evaluation of Alice when she put on the mask of a good girl. Although this girl looked beautiful and had a transcendent temperament, her essence was that she was a naughty girl who liked to join in the fun and wanted to see the world in chaos. Therefore, for Noah, although Alice's beauty and elegance were not without, she was more playful and cute. In any case, in terms of female charm alone, Alice was indeed the best in the world. Therefore, Noah's attitude was quite casual. Based on the time I've been in this country, until I leave, they should be considered as my followers, right? In fact, only Hui Na was Noah's follower. As for Yoli, it was only because he had a good relationship with Noah that he was asked by the official history compilation committee to continue following Noah. While helping Noah, he could also use this relationship to appease Noah when Noah, the God Slayer, was out of control. From this point of view, Yoli could be considered Noah's follower. Of course, Yoli's spirit vision was indeed quite outstanding. Keeping this girl by his side would sometimes be very helpful. In view of this, Noah did not object. Understanding this, Alice pursed her lips and smiled. Her every move was indeed elegant and graceful. First, it was Erica and Miss Liliana, and now there are two beautiful witches. It seems that Sir Noah has quite the potential to attract beautiful women. This is different from other god slayers who lack interest in women. Alice's words made Yoli and Hui Na involuntarily think of Luo Hao's matter again. Their pretty faces blushed slightly again, and they lowered their heads shyly. Noah, on the other hand, took a deep look at Alice and said with a faint smile. Maybe. After all, even the best women in Europe are attracted by me. I can indeed be proud of this. Saying such a sentence, Noah glanced at Alice's lips without a trace. Alice, who noticed Noah's gaze, suddenly reacted. Her pretty face was also red, and she said in a panic. At that time, Sir Noah, you were just messing around. It was not my intention. At that time. Noah made a teasing sound. At what time? At that time. Alice rolled her eyes at Noah awkwardly. Sir Noah, you are still so bad. You have been teasing ladies. You definitely have the potential to be a playboy. In the past, in Alice's home, after Noah helped Alice recover her health with the protection of the priest, before he left, he had also mischievously kissed Alice's lips, teasing the most outstanding princess in Europe. From that time on, probably in Alice's heart, Noah was a bad man who liked to tease girls, right? However, in fact, Noah rarely teased a girl like that. But in the face of Alice, a playful and cute girl who usually pretended to be obedient, Noah always wanted to tease her. Although, in terms of age, Alice was actually 3 or 4 years older than Noah. Who asked you to be so easy to tease? Noah shrugged. Moreover, the lips of the beautiful girl who is known as the Princess of Europe, I believe that as long as you are a man, you will want to taste them, right? This sentence made Yoli and Huina's faces turn red at the same time. Lips? Huina said in surprise and shyness. Has the king tasted the princess's lips? You are indeed the king. Not pure. Yoli also blushed and whispered softly. It's really too impure. Even Yoli and Huina blushed, and Alice, as the party concerned, was even more flustered. Please don't say this kind of thing in such a place. That is not the behavior of a gentleman. Alice glared at Noah and said loudly. Moreover, I am not here to be intimate with Sir Noah, but to talk about business. Is that so? Noah raised his eyebrows and ridiculed. In other words, after talking about business, we can be intimate, right? No. Alice fell into a state of confusion, which was rare for her. I didn't mean that. Seeing that Alice began to feel ashamed and angry, Noah, who felt that it was enough, smiled, reached out, and picked up the teacup on the table. After taking a sip of the hot tea, he went to the main topic. You are here to inquire about the god ancestor, Ganivia, right? Seeing that Noah went to the main topic, Alice could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. She looked at Noah with some resentment and said so. I came here because there is reliable information that Lord Ganivia came to this country. Moreover, when Sir Noah killed the great sage, Heaven's equal, she met with Sir Noah, right? If a conflict can be regarded as a meeting, then that is it. Noah continued to drink the hot tea and answered indifferently. However, in the end, it was right to let her escape. Even Sir Noah could not catch Lord Ganivia. Alice sighed. That's right. Even Alexander, who has the authority of seraphic speed, could not catch Lord Ganivia for so many years. It is not that easy to catch the god ancestor. Noah also nodded. Noah had confronted the god ancestor directly twice. The first time was when Perseus was killed by Noah. At that time, because the Holy Grail was taken away by Noah by some unknown means, Ganivia was already a little afraid of Noah. However, at that time, Ganivia actually had a trump card that made him not afraid of Noah. First, it was Lancelot. Although Lancelot was only the shadow of God, Noah had just become a god-slayer at that time. If he were to face Lancelot, he wouldn't be able to severely injure Lancelot as soon as they met. He would definitely be entangled with Lancelot. In this way, Guinevere could find a chance to escape. Secondly, Guinevere's arrowhead disc stored Perseus's steel. He could summon it and join forces with Lancelot to deal with Noah. If that was the case, Noah at that time was not without a way to win. After all, Noah had the knowledge of Lancelot and Perseus. He could use the warrior's sword of spiritual speech to take down the two gods of steel at the same time. The problem was that at that time, Noah undoubtedly had the knowledge of Lancelot, the Knight of the Lake, but there was no way to use the warrior's sword of spiritual speech. Because of this, Noah was vigilant and thought that things were not that simple, so he let Guinevere go. This time, Guinevere's arrowhead disc contained the steel of Perseus and the great sage, heaven's equal. If he joined forces with Lancelot to deal with Noah, Noah was not 100% confident that he could stop Guinevere without using his power. It could be seen that even though Guinevere was only a god ancestor, his trump cards were quite frightening. It was not easy to deal with him. Thinking of this, Noah could not help but ask. "Hey, Alice, is Lancelot really the Knight of the Lake?" Noah's question startled Alice at first, then she spoke in surprise. "Lord Noah, have you noticed Lancelot's real body?" "Real body?" Noah narrowed his eyes. In other words, this Lancelot is really not the Knight of the Lake under King Arthur in the Celtic mythology of Great Britain? Alice hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Now, there is nothing to hide. Yes, the Lancelot by Lord Guinevere's side is indeed not the famous Knight of the Lake, but an even more ancient existence." Saying this, Alice solemnly said, "Lord Noah, who do you think the last king is?" Chapter 1450. Alice's question made Noah, who was about to bring the teacup to his mouth, pause slightly. Who was the so-called last king? In fact, this problem should have appeared much earlier. However, Noah already had a guess about the identity of the last king. No matter who it is, as long as they know about the existence of the last king, they will call him the last king to appear in the world, which is the god that will appear in the apocalypse. Noah drank the hot tea in the teacup in his hand, put the teacup on the table, and looked straight at Alice. The gods that will appear in the apocalypse can be found in various mythological systems, but the king that Lancelot will worship is only that one, right? The legendary king of Great Britain, known as the King of Knights, King Arthur. Alice said the name that was quite familiar to everyone. That king does meet all the conditions. In the book, The Death of King Arthur, which recorded the legend of King Arthur, there was a very famous tombstone inscription. Hic Jactec Arthur, Rex Quandam Rex Ca Futurus King Arthur of the past and the future lies here. It meant that the legendary king would not stay in the past. The King of Knights would awaken in the future world and become a king again. This was not just a casual remark. In the legend of Great Britain in Celtic mythology, King Arthur was seriously injured in the last battle of his life. He was sent to Avalon, known as the Island of Fairies, and fell into a deep sleep to heal his injuries. In other words, in the myth, the King of Knights with the name of King Arthur did not die, but silently waited for the time to awaken. Therefore, many people who believed in King Arthur believed that one day, King Arthur would wake up in Avalon and descend upon this land again. Therefore, King Arthur was known as the king of the past and the future. In view of this, there were also people who advocated that when King Arthur returned to the world, it was likely to be the day of the apocalypse. At that time, as the king of legends, this king would save the world, save mankind, and restore peace to the world. In other words, King Arthur fully met the criteria of being the last king to appear in the world. In addition, the knight named Lancelot called the last king as his master. Guinevere, who used to be the goddess of earth and was King Arthur's wife in Celtic mythology, was also pursuing the last king. It was natural that King Arthur would be regarded as the last king. However, if this Lancelot isn't Lancelot, the Knight of the Lake in Celtic mythology, then the inference that the last king is King Arthur needs to be verified. At this moment, knowledge that matched the characteristics and nature of the last king flashed through Noah's mind. Noah rubbed his forehead. And if the last king is not King Arthur, then it would be a little difficult to find out who this god, the natural enemy of the god slayers, is. Just as Lord Noah said. Alice nodded. Because Lancelot's identity is a mystery, the true identity of the last king is also difficult to know. So, you also don't know the true identity of the last king? Noah frowned. Including Lancelot's true identity? Although it's very embarrassing, not only me, but also many famous witches, and even Alexander, who has been pursuing the Holy Grail and exploring the secrets of the last king, don't know the true identity of the two. Alice said. I'm afraid that Lord Noah doesn't know that whether it is King Arthur, the Knight of the Lake, or even the origin of the entire British legend, in fact, it was fabricated by Lord Guinevere. You. What did you say? Noah was shocked. You said fabricated? Fabricated myths? Yes. Alice seemed to want to emphasize the authenticity of her words and nodded heavily. We can be sure that the existence of King Arthur and even the myths related to him are all fabricated by Lord Guinevere. With that said, Alice began to explain. As everyone knew, the true form of the gods was actually the myth itself. If the gods that originally only existed in myths violated their own myths and appeared on earth, then this god would become the body of a rebel and be swallowed by madness, becoming a god of disobedience. There were myths, and then there were gods. Therefore, the gods that had appeared so far were all famous figures known by the world. And if there were no myths, there would naturally be no gods that didn't exist. For example, the great sage. If there was no such super famous figure in Journey to the West, the world would not know of this figure's existence, then this god would definitely not appear out of thin air and descend on earth. Since ancient times, there have been thousands of myths born through the hands of human beings. Naturally, there is no lack of myths that suddenly disappeared or suddenly changed, Alice explained. And if the myths change, then the nature of the gods will also change. That is the law that the gods who are myths can never get rid of. Noah nodded in agreement. Take Athena for example. She was originally the queen of the divine realm who ruled the Mediterranean mythology. Later, the feminist society was denied, and the era of male sovereignty came. The myths were changed by men, and Athena, the queen of the divine realm, was degraded. At this point, the divinity of the Trinity Queen of the divine realm was divided, and they became the wife of Zeus in Greek mythology, Metis, and her daughter Athena. The snake part became Medusa, and she was directly degraded to a banshee and was spurned by people. Fortunately, the myth of Athena as the queen of the Mediterranean had not completely disappeared. Therefore, Athena still had a chance to restore her identity as the queen of the Trinity and once again rule the divine realm. But if a myth is completely changed, then the identity of the god at the center of this myth will also be completely changed, Alice pondered for a moment and then said. For example, there is a military god who is worshipped as the strongest knight in the world, but he was not like this 1,000 years ago. If that god were to descend tomorrow, he would descend as the strongest knight in the present myth. But, if he were to descend more than 1,000 years ago, then this god will be the divinity of 1,000 years ago when the myth was still changed. Noah raised his head and looked at Alice. Is this the case for Lancelot? Yes, he is a god who appeared 1,000 years ago. The myths that were closely related to him during the past 1,000 years have been lost. They have been changed into the myth of Lancelot, the Knight of the Lake, which has been widely passed down. Alice met Noah's gaze. And the person who did this is Lord Guinevere. It was said that the current Guinevere was actually the reincarnation of the second generation. As the goddess of the earth, after Guinevere created the Holy Grail, at the cost of her immortal life, the first generation of godly ancestor Guinevere was born. After that, the first generation of Guinevere was killed on the journey to find the last king. After a few hundred years, she was reincarnated and became the current Guinevere. In order to let the last king descend, the first generation of Lord Guinevere chose a shortcut. Alice's eyes flickered. That is, to weave a legend similar to the last king into a myth and then spread it out. After the myth was formed, like Marquis Warban, he used a ritual to summon the last king, That myth is the legend of King Arthur. Noah said with some surprise and some emotion. That is to say, King Arthur's prototype is the last king. That's right. For this reason, the first generation of Lord Guinevere also added Guinevere and Lancelot, who served the last king, into the myth and became King Arthur's concubine and minister, Alice said with a sigh. It's a pity that before the myth could take shape and the summoning ritual could begin, the first Lord Guinevere died and was only reincarnated a few hundred years later. During these few hundred years, this myth had deviated from the norm and was rewoven and tampered with by many people. In the end, King Arthur was born and became an independent myth. He also became a brand new god, a similar but different existence with the last king as the prototype. Alice picked up the teacup and quenched her thirst after a long explanation. At the same time, the myth of Lancelot was also changed. He became the Knight of the Lake in the legend of Great Britain. His real body was buried in the long river of history. That was why Noah couldn't use the sword of words on Lancelot. Because this Lancelot was not the Knight of the Lake that Noah knew. Therefore, the so-called last king was also not King Arthur. Because King Arthur's original form was the real last king. The huge amount of information made Noah close his eyes slightly. After pondering for a while, he opened them again and said to Alice. Then, do you know that the god known as the last king is sleeping in this country? You. What did you say? Alice finally lost her voice. Chapter 1451. At this time, among the 4 people present, except for Noah, Alice, Yoli, and Huina's expressions all changed. Alice was shocked because of the unexpected news. Yoli and Huina were surprised. Unlike Alice, Yoli and Huina didn't know what kind of existence the so-called last king was. However, from the conversation between Noah and Alice just now, the 2 witches at least understood some things. For example, the so-called last king was a very dangerous and powerful god. Otherwise, even Guinevere and Lancelot wouldn't worship him, and Black Prince Yarek had been pursuing this mystery. Another example was that the so-called last king was a god that would appear in the end of the world. Although they didn't know what the end of the world was, if the arrival of a god was based on such a condition, then it would be terrible. After all, the appearance of a god that didn't obey was generally accompanied by disasters brought about by his own attributes. If the sun god appeared, the whole world may be attacked by high temperature. If the sea god appeared, the whole world may be submerged by tsunamis. If this so-called last king was the last king to appear in the world, then did that mean that when this god appeared, it would bring about disasters of the same nature? For example, the end of the world. If the god sleeping in this country was such an existence, then why did the elders in secluded world try their best to conceal the existence of such a dangerous god, and even summoned the great sage, heavens equal to heaven to slay the dragon and the snake? The reason was completely clear. How could this be? Yoli said with some disbelief. Why would such a dangerous god be sleeping in this country? Grandpa and the others have been hiding the god. Is this last king? Even Huina said with some wry smile. It feels like things have become troublesome all of a sudden. As for Alice, she had recovered from her shock. She stood up abruptly and peered her pretty face in Noah's direction. She exclaimed with a face full of surprise. Is this news true? Noah couldn't help but laugh when he saw Alice's face, which was filled with surprise, suddenly appear in front of him. Although I only heard about it from others, based on what I've encountered so far, this news should be absolutely true. Hearing this, Alice's expression suddenly became absent-minded. I didn't expect that the last king was actually in this country. Then, Alice cheered up. Great, it was right to come here. Alexander definitely didn't know this news. In this way, I'm one step ahead. That guy will definitely be angry. As said before, in addition to being a god slayer, Black Prince Yerek was also an adventurer and explorer. Yerek's father had been pursuing the Holy Grail all his life. Even when he died of exhaustion, he still couldn't achieve his goal. Using this as an opportunity, Yerek embarked on the path of searching for the Holy Grail. Because of this, he coincidentally became a god slayer, completely opening the path of adventure and exploration. For this guy, the last king that Ganivia had been searching for was definitely a puzzle that could stimulate the greatest curiosity in his heart. Therefore, while looking for the Holy Grail, Yerek had been trying to solve the mystery of the last king. The former Guinevere tried to summon the last king by fabricating a myth, but the result was that he gave up halfway. The truth that led to the appearance of the legend of King Arthur was solved by Yerek. However, Yerek had never solved the real body and whereabouts of the last king. He could only find some clues. Alice couldn't help but feel excited when she thought about finding the whereabouts of the last king before her enemy. There's no time to lose. I have to quickly arrange for people to find the real sleeping place of the last king in this country. Otherwise, with Alexander's cunning, it won't be long before he finds out that the last king is in this island country. With such a sentence, Alice immediately got up, turned around, and prepared to run out without thinking. However, before that, Noah also got up and grabbed Alice's hand. Wait! Alice, who didn't expect that Noah would suddenly grab her, suddenly lost her balance and exclaimed. Following the strength of Noah's hand, she fell in the direction of Noah. Seeing this, Noah almost subconsciously reached out and hugged Alice, who fell into his arms. Ah, wow, this time, even Yoli and Hui Na exclaimed and opened their eyes wide. Huh! Alice, on the other hand, couldn't react in time. When she felt the warmth of Noah's chest and the strength of his arm around her waist, her pretty face blushed slightly. Seeing the scene of Alice falling into his arms with a red face, Noah was amused. He reached out and pinched Alice's delicate little nose. I say, no matter what, you are a senior who is a few years older than me. Can't you act a little more like an elder? Don't be so reckless. Otherwise, your title of princess will cry. Being treated by Noah with such an intimate action, Alice's face became even redder, and she retorted with an extremely unnatural look. No. No such thing. This is a very calm judgment. Since we know that the last king is on this island, then of course we have to find him as soon as possible. If it was so easy to find, then you wouldn't have to search for the last king for so many years. Noah said snappily. Besides, in this country, there is a group of old people who have lived in seclusion for who knows how many years. All these years, in order to hide the whereabouts of the last king, they have put in a lot of effort. In this way, how can it be so easy to find? The elders who live in seclusion. Alice was slightly startled and frowned. They hid the whereabouts of the last king? Most likely. Noah shrugged. So, it's better that you don't rashly start a search in this country. Otherwise, if you are entangled by that group of arrogant old people, you will be annoyed to death. Even if you want to search, you can't let the Sage Council do the search. After all, this is the territory of the Official History Compilation Committee. That's right. Hui Na nodded quickly. It should be the committee that does the search. But, such a dangerous existence, why do we have to find it? Yoli stepped forward and made his own voice. Since the last king is so dangerous, let him continue to sleep and prevent others from waking him up. That's what we should do, right? How can that be? Alice immediately retorted. Then wouldn't it be not interesting at all? This sentence made Yoli and Hui Na dumbfounded. Interesting? Noah couldn't help but cover his face. This Alice, she actually exposed her true nature. Ugh. Alice only then reacted and smiled a little embarrassedly. I mean, there is no way to deal with Lord Guinevere and Alexander in this way, right? Only by taking control of the information first can we make the next move. Is that so? Yoli and Hui Na looked at each other. However, the two witches still chose to believe in Europe's best woman and were deceived by Alice's obedient girl mask. At this time, Yoli's pretty face was slightly red, and she said with some anger. By the way, how long are you two going to hug each other? Isn't it too indecent to do this kind of behavior on this occasion? You are the Devil King and the Princess. Yoli's words made Noah and Alice react. The two were still hugging each other tightly. At the moment, Noah smiled awkwardly and let go of the hand around Alice's slender waist. Alice jumped away as if she had been bounced off. She also had an awkward expression on her face. At this time, Noah's mobile phone rang, interrupting the awkward atmosphere at the scene. Noah breathed a sigh of relief, took out his mobile phone from his arms, and picked up the phone. The next second, a valiant voice sounded from the mobile phone. Our king, as your knights, we have come to your side. Are you not going to pick us up? Noah's eyes lit up. Chapter 1452. This was a bustling airport with people coming and going. Although the location was some distance away from the hotel of the Western Heaven Palace, this airport was the closest airport nearby. In this bustling airport, Noah, Yoli, and Huina stayed in a corner. The people around them were all locals who came to pick them up. As the people who got off the plane arrived one by one, the people who came to pick them up also enthusiastically laughed and chatted with each other. They walked to the exit of the airport hand in hand. It was very lively. Noah, Yoli, and Huina also came to pick them up. Because of the bustling airport with people coming and going, Yoli naturally did not wear the witch costume anymore. Instead, she changed into a white hooded coat and dark gray trousers. Huina was still wearing the student uniform from an unknown school. She even carried the long cloth bag with the katana on her shoulder. Both girls obediently stayed about a step behind Noah, occupying the left and right sides like followers. However, the people they were going to pick up now were Noah's followers in the truest sense. Miss Erica and Miss Liliana. Yoli murmured. It is said that the two are prodigies of Italy. They are genius knights who achieved the rank of Grand Knight at a young age. At the same time, they are also followers that the king got after becoming a god slayer. Huina smiled with some expectation. I'm really curious about what kind of people the king's followers are. While saying such a sentence, a strong competitive spirit emerged in Huina's eyes. It was the manifestation of fighting spirit when it was aroused. It seemed that Huina was not curious about what kind of people Erica and Liliana were, but what level of power they had. It was an extremely pure martial arts style. Noah, who did not notice this, looked ahead and spread his hands. If I were to describe what kind of people they are, I can only say that they are two very eye-catching people in various senses. At this moment, the noise in the entire airport suddenly weakened. Noah, Yoli, and Huina, who were talking, raised their heads at the same time and looked forward in surprise. Soon after, the three of them understood why the sound around them had suddenly weakened. Because in the airport, almost everyone turned their eyes in one direction, as if attracted by something, and subconsciously shut their mouths. Noah, Yoli, and Huina immediately turned their gazes and looked in the direction where everyone was looking. Over there were two young girls taking strong and forceful steps. Under the gazes of everyone present, they slowly walked over. I say, Erica, it's about time you picked up your pace. Who knows when you'll reach your destination if you keep walking like that? You're still so inflexible, Lily. It's rare to come to a country that you've never been to before. Shouldn't you take a good look at the surroundings first? That kind of thing can be done in the future. There's no need to specially do it now, right? You're right, but we don't seem to have a reason to be in a hurry. Anyway, the king must be living a better life than us. It doesn't make a difference whether we arrive earlier or later. It's not a matter of ability, but a matter of loyalty and responsibility. Although I know you've always lacked such sentiments, that's the king we serve after all. It's a dereliction of duty if you don't rush to the person you need to be loyal to as soon as possible. You say so, but in fact, you're in such a hurry because you can't help but want to see the king as soon as possible, right? No, no such thing. Do you think you can make me waver by saying such words? I won't be affected by you. Lily, before you say that, shouldn't you think about your own performance? Is your voice trembling? The beautiful voice like that of a mighty lioness and the mournful voice kept ringing, frequently attracting the attention of the surrounding people. A young girl with waist-length golden hair that was resplendent like a crown and a young girl with long silver ponytail like a fairy in the night. One of them had a majestic smile. The other looked a little flustered. Both of them walked forward in the space under the gazes of thousands of people as if there was no one else around them. As the two young girls were conversing in Italian, the people here basically didn't know what kind of conversation they were having. But in any case, in terms of appearance alone, Erica and Liliana had strong capital to attract attention, making the bustling crowd in the airport quiet down a lot all of a sudden. A beautiful blonde girl and a beautiful silver-haired girl. For the people in this country, such two foreign beauties were definitely enough to shock them. Not to mention, the two girls were both people with great temperament. One was confident and gorgeous, while the other was awe-inspiring and rigorous. In various senses, they were existences that could attract the attention of others. Judging from this point of view, although Yuri and Keiko had looks that weren't inferior to the two young girls, they didn't have the kind of eye-catching high-profile temperament. Instead, they tended to be low-key like Yamato Nadeshiko. Therefore, for Yuri and Keiko, Erica and Liliana were the kind of people who were quite dazzling. It was precisely because she considered that they would be so eye-catching that Alice didn't come with them. Instead, she stayed in the hotel. If the princess, who was known as the most outstanding woman in Europe, came to the airport in person, she would definitely become the most eye-catching existence in this airport, right? Even extremely dazzling people like Erica and Liliana couldn't compare. Of course, for others, Yuri and Keiko were the kind of people who were quite sophisticated. Under such circumstances, the two young girls, who were talking and walking as if there was no one else around, met Noah's eyes in the next moment. Both Erica and Liliana were slightly taken aback at this moment. Then, one of the two young girls showed an even more gorgeous smile, while the other regained her righteous expression. In the clear sound of footsteps, Erica and Liliana came in front of Noah. "Your Majesty," Liliana said in a serious tone. Liliana Kranikar has now returned. She was as serious as ever. "And me, Erica Browntree." The gorgeous smile on Erica's face didn't change in the slightest. "We haven't seen each other for a month, Your Majesty. Although I'm looking forward to hearing some touching words of reunion from you, I know that you're not the kind of person who is very emotional at all times, so I won't ask for anything." Erica was as confident and gorgeous as ever. The two knights, who had traveled with Noah for nearly half a year, finally returned to Noah's side again. Just as Erica said, Noah wasn't the kind of person who was very emotional at all times. Therefore, Noah could only smile bitterly and shrug at the two knights' announcement of their return in different styles. "Although that's the case, the timing of your return isn't too good. I reckon that you'll be involved in a big dispute all of a sudden." "If that's the case, it should be said that the timing is right," Erica said with a smile. "Appearing on the best stage is proof that even God doesn't intend to deprive me, Erica Browntree, of the opportunity to perform. No matter what the occasion is, my duty is to protect your Majesty," Liliana said with a determined expression and tone. "As long as I can fulfill my duty, no matter what the occasion is, it'll be a good opportunity for me. A night full of confidence and a night full of honesty." Although the two knights spoke in different ways, the meaning behind their words was that they were willing to accompany Noah through mountains of swords and seas of fire. This made Noah feel helpless, but at the same time, the corners of his mouth unconsciously lifted slightly. At that moment, Hui Na, who was standing beside Noah, said with a sweet smile, As expected of your majesty's official follower. Your words are so bold that even Hui Na is impressed. Hearing Hui Na's words, Erica and Liliana fixed their eyes on her. At that moment, no one expected that. This was the beginning of the dispute between the followers of your majesty. Chapter 1453. Noah didn't know if it was his illusion or not. However, Noah did feel it. At this moment, the surrounding atmosphere suddenly became tense. The knight from Italy and the witch from Japan looked at each other, and there were some sparks in their eyes at the same time. Hui Na stared at Erica and Liliana, and the smile on her pretty face was more or less different from usual. It was as if she was evaluating something, sizing up something, examining something, and confirming something. Looking at Erica and Liliana, Hui Na said with both shock and admiration. Hui Na can clearly feel it. Whether it is Miss Erica or Miss Liliana, although they are both very beautiful girls on the outside, they have a tempered aura. They are definitely not easy to deal with. Hearing Hui Na's words, Erica and Liliana looked at each other, and then looked at Hui Na again. We have heard about you. I remember your name is Qingxiu Courtyard's Hui Na, right? Erica accepted Hui Na's evaluation in an upright manner, and also glanced at Yuri, who had a blank look on his face as if he didn't know what was going on. And you are Wanrigu Yuri. Both of you are the witches of the Japanese magic world, and the followers of our king arranged by the History Compilation Committee, right? Yes. Yes. Yuri quickly saluted. I am Wanrigu Yuri, nice to meet you. I am Liliana Kranikar, belonging to the Bronze Black Cross of Milan, Italy. Liliana nodded politely. During this period of time, thank you for taking care of our king. We sincerely apologize to you for the trouble he has caused. Hey. What do you mean by the trouble I have caused? Noah felt that he should speak up. I know my place, okay? The word know your place is really not a compliment when used on a god slayer. Liliana immediately retorted. Besides, I heard everything from Erica. It is said that the great sage, Heaven's Equal, was released by our king. Isn't that true? Noah was at a loss for words. Because you released the great sage, Heaven's Equal, not only did god ancestor Ganivia come to this country, even the Black Prince and sect leader Luo Hao came. Liliana sighed. It was the same when you were in Italy. You made your debut by killing two of the highest-level gods of disobedience. Then, you met Athena. Using this as an opportunity, you attracted Marquis Warban, Archbishop Luo Hao, and Salvatore. When you were in Naples, you got entangled with the Black Prince, Lancelot, and Perseus. It seems that in terms of the attractiveness of being a king, you have indeed surpassed the rest of your kind. Wasn't that right? At present, there were only 7 godslayers. There were only 7 godslayers among the billions of people on Earth. However, every time Noah got involved in a dispute, he would attract more than 2 or 3 of his kind. Gods were as numerous as the stars in the sky. However, there were not many gods of disobedience on the ground. Otherwise, veteran godslayers like Warban and Luo Hao would have killed an astonishing number of gods, and the number of authorities they would have obtained would have reached an unimaginable level. The reason why this did not happen was that most of the gods were easy to defeat but difficult to kill, and it was also because the gods of disobedience on the ground did not matter much. Under such circumstances, every time Noah got involved in a dispute, there would be at least 2 or 3 gods of disobedience. He was really an anomaly. In this regard, Noah had nothing to say. Fortunately, Liliana did not know that Luo Hao had been completely devoured by Noah. Otherwise, this innocent but delusional knight would have exploded long ago. Erica, on the other hand, looked natural and unrestrained. Lily, you can't blame our king too much. Just like how beautiful girls attract bees and butterflies, individuals with great power will only be attracted by great power. From this point of view, doesn't it prove that our king is more outstanding than the other godslayers? I'm not denying that our king is outstanding. Liliana shook her head. I'm just lamenting that our king's life has always been so turbulent. Indeed. Erica looked at Noah with a faint smile. It's naturally a good thing for a man to be capable, but for a woman who is attracted to such a man, it will be quite difficult. I hope our king won't make too many girls cry in the future. The corners of Noah's mouth twitched, and he felt like his sore spot had been poked. At this moment, Hui Na expressed a different opinion. Is that so? But Hui Na prefers men like our king who don't bring too much boredom. Erica and Liliana were both taken aback by his words. As for Yoli, he was frightened by Hui Na's bold confession, and he pulled Hui Na's clothes with a blush on his face. Hui Na, what are you talking about? Hui Na is just telling the truth. Yoli won't like that kind of boring man, right? Hui Na said to Yoli as if it was a matter of course. Then, she clapped her hands as if she had thought of a good idea. However, if Miss Erica and Miss Liliana don't like our king, it doesn't matter. Hui Na will be our king's attendant anyway. It doesn't matter if Miss Erica and Miss Liliana are there or not. I'll repeat what I said here. Although Hui Na had received the education of a lady from a noble family, she was a natural girl who grew up in nature. Such a girl, even if she was the next head of the Meishio courtyard family, one of the 4 leading families in the Japanese magic circle, naturally didn't know anything about intrigue. Therefore, Hui Na's words were just pure thoughts in her heart. There was no malice in her words. However, in the ears of Erica and Liliana, this sentence was naturally full of provocation. Not to mention Erica and Liliana, even Yoli was a little surprised. Noah was also slightly taken aback. You're called Meishio Courtyard's Hui Na, right? Liliana frowned and looked straight at Hui Na. I can't pretend that I didn't hear what you said just now. Do you mean that I'm no longer of any use to our king? Huh? Hui Na didn't say that. Hui Na said with some confusion. Hui Na just said that both Miss Erica and Miss Liliana are great people. Hui Na can clearly feel this. However, you also said that if you're by our king's side, it doesn't matter whether we're there or not, right? Erica raised her eyebrows and put on an imposing smile like a lion. Can I take it that you're saying that you alone can beat me and Lily? Upon hearing this, Hui Na blinked and suddenly smiled. Actually, Hui Na doesn't know, but Miss Erica and Miss Liliana don't give Hui Na a sense of danger, so that should be it. You. Liliana immediately wanted to step forward, but was stopped by Erica. Erica stared at Hui Na intently, and at the next moment, she suddenly smiled. I, Erica Brantley, have never been looked down upon like this since I was born. It's really a fresh feeling for me. But, Miss Hui Na, it's not up to you to judge a person's ability. Erica Brantley said. Erica's words made Hui Na's eyes light up, and the smile on her face became wider and more enthusiastic. In other words, Miss Erica, are you going to spar with Hui Na? Hui Na. Yoli finally panicked. Noah finally frowned, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he watched quietly from the side. Under such circumstances, Erica shrugged her shoulders. Exchanging swords is also a knight's etiquette. I also want to confirm if Miss Hui Na is qualified to be our king's temporary attendant. Hui Na has no objections, Hui Na replied immediately. I'm willing to accompany you anytime. The battle between the attendants was successfully ignited. Chapter 1454. Whoosh! A whistling gust of wind blew past, stirring up a cloud of sand and dust. In an open space in the suburbs not far from the airport, Erica and Hui Na were facing each other with a distance between them. Both young ladies had smiles on their faces. However, that smile showed that the 2 girls had completely different temperaments. The smile on Erica's pretty face was naturally an extremely gorgeous and confident smile. On the other hand, the smile on Hui Na's pretty face was so innocent. However, no one could clearly see the scorching battle intent contained in their smiles. Whoosh! Another gust of wind blew past with a whistling sound, causing Erica and Hui Na's waist-length hair to sway up and down, making them look rather casual and unrestrained. Not far from the two of them, Noah, Yoli, and Liliana stood side by side as they stared at the two of them in a standoff. Why didn't you stop them? Yoli questioned Noah. If it's your order, Miss Erica and Hui Na should have obeyed. No, you're wrong, Wanli Gu, Liliana answered before Noah could. Even if it's the king's order, those two probably won't obey. After all, although one of them is a knight and the other is a witch, they are still warriors at heart. Noah stared at Erica and Hui Na, who were in a standoff. Even if I stop them, it will only slow down the burning of the tinder. It's better to get rid of them once and for all. But, Yoli said anxiously. What if those two are injured? Don't worry, Noah answered directly. Not to mention injuries, even if they lose their arms, legs, or even their lives, I have a way to make them recover instantly. Is that so? Liliana was a little surprised. When did you master that kind of power? Upon hearing that, Noah glanced at Liliana in exasperation. When you didn't know. Naturally, this answer was not enough to make Liliana give up. However, before Liliana could launch her attack, Erica and Hui Na seemed to be tired of the confrontation and broke the silence. The Steel Lion and the Lionheart King, as my ancestor, hear the oath of Knight Erica Brantley. I am the successor of the Horn Flute, the descendant of the Black Warrior. My heart will not yield, my sword will never break. O Lionheart King, the essence of struggle is now in my hands. The time for the duel has come, Lionheart King. Amidst the awe-inspiring voice, a light knight's sword that resembled a western sword flashed out of the radiance of spells and landed in Erica's hand. Is that Miss Erica's weapon? Hui Na's expression didn't change. She just untied the cloth bag on her shoulder, opened the bag, and slowly pulled out a sharp katana. Then I'll use this to fight. Looking at the katana in Hui Na's hand, Erica said provocatively. That doesn't seem to be a particularly powerful weapon. Erica's Lion King's heart wasn't an ordinary weapon. It was a magic sword forged with special alchemy steel and other magic mediums. This sword had an attribute called indestructible. No matter how it was destroyed, Erica could restore it in an instant. Whether it was sharpness or power, it wouldn't decrease in the slightest. Moreover, it could cut through iron like mud. On the other hand, although the katana in Hui Na's hand was quite famous, it wasn't a weapon that even people in the magic and spell world would be amazed by. It can't be helped. Hui Na's original katana was destroyed by the king because it offended him. Hui Na can only use this. Hui Na pointed the tip of the katana at Erica from afar, maintaining a smile on her face. But this is enough. Anyway, my opponent is only Miss Erica. Is that so? Erica's eyes glinted. Then I don't need to show any mercy. The moment she finished speaking, a surge of spell power surged from Erica's body. Fly, Boots of Hermes, a magic square array shrouded in red light spun out from the ground under Erica's feet. As if it had become a propelling force, Erica's figure turned into an afterimage and shot towards Hui Na. It was a magic trick called Leap. It was a magic trick that could make one's body extremely light and even make one jump by stepping on air. After using this magic trick, Erica's body became extremely light and nimble. As soon as she stepped on the ground, she arrived in front of Hui Na in a flash like a slender bolt of lightning. Immediately after, the demonic sword in Erica's hand, which was called the Heart of the Lion King, drew a straight arc with a fierce force and pierced towards Hui Na's face. In the face of this fierce attack, Hui Na just narrowed her eyes and stared at the tip of the sword that was getting closer and closer. When the tip of Lion King's heart was less than 10 centimeters away from Hui Na suddenly raised the katana in her hand and performed a sword draw slash. Clang! The steel sword and the katana collided in midair, causing a crisp sound and a burst of sparks. However, at this moment, the corners of Erika's mouth curled up. She shook the Lion King's heart in her hand and suddenly thrust it out. Chi! The sharp magic sword cut through the air, bringing with it a cold light. However, there was not only one cold light, but three. They formed a triangle and pierced toward Hui Na at the same time with cold arcs of light. Wow! Miss Erika is so powerful. In the face of Erika's attack, Hui Na first cried out in surprise, and then she quickly took 2 steps back. She clenched the Tai Dao in her hand tightly, and without the slightest fanciness, she let her strength surge into the blade and slashed down at the 3 sword lights that were thrusting at her. Swish! It was a simple slash, but it brought with it a bright saber light. Like a waterfall falling from the sky, it tore through the air and heavily hacked at the 3 brilliant sword lights. Bang! Accompanied by a low explosion, the 3 cold lights were shattered by the saber light at the same time, shattering like glass in the air. However, this scene made Hui Na's face turn solemn. Since the 3 sword lights had exploded, there could only be one meaning. The real attack was not in the 3 sword lights. Whoosh! Indeed, a sharp demonic sword shot out like lightning from behind the 3 sword glows that had exploded like glass. It drew a straight trajectory and shot out like an arrow that had left a bow. Seeing this, even Hui Na did not dare to underestimate Erika's sword attack. She quickly raised the katana in her hand and collided with Erika's magic sword. Clang! After the crisp sound of metal clashing, the figures of the 2 girls holding the magic sword and the katana began to intertwine. Clang! 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 The knight from Italy and the witch from Japan seemed to have turned into 2 dancing phantoms at this moment. They intertwined in the open space like ghosts, and their sabers and swords mercilessly slashed at each other's bodies. Clang! 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 The sword light and the saber light repeatedly collided with each other, causing intense sparks to fly everywhere. Every time they collided, it would set off waves of sharp strength chi. It was like an invisible waterfall that landed on the surrounding open space one after another, leaving cuts on the surface. Noah, Yoli, and Liliana's eyes were all focused on the 2 figures that intertwined like ghosts and swung their swords at each other. Their eyes did not move from the beginning to the end, not even for a moment. In such a situation, Yoli was so worried that he even twisted his hands together. Liliana's face turned solemn, and she whispered. Hui Na of the Qingqiu Academy can actually use swordsmanship that is on par with Erika's. Her strength is really powerful. Erika probably can't do anything to her with swordsmanship alone. She can only use magic to determine the winner. Noah, who clearly heard Liliana's words, did not say anything on the surface, but he shook his head in his heart. Liliana's statement was correct. However, that was under normal circumstances. If Erika used magic, Hui Na would also use her trump card. It was a foul secret skill called God Descends. Chapter 1455. Clang! The sound of metal clashing and the bursting sparks were still reverberating in the space. Under the gaze of Noah, Yoli, and Liliana, Erika and Hui Na were carrying out an attack and defense that only masters of swordsmanship could do. The 2 sides exchanged blows, and the situation in the field was neck and neck. As Liliana said, Erika and Hui Na's attainments in swordsmanship were basically the same, so the 2 girls' attacks and defenses were quite perfect. However, that was only the current situation. Except for Liliana, Noah and Yoli both knew that Hui Na was still hiding her trump card. The secret technique named, Invite God to Descend, was a power that could even drive the personal disciple of the king of Wuxia, the best martial artist in the world, into desperation. Even Erika, who was known as a prodigy, probably couldn't deal with it, could she? After all, it was a skill that could borrow the power of the gods. Even if the borrowed power was only a few 10,000ths, it was still not something that humans could resist. Without the power comparable to that of a mythical beast or a god ancestor, it was impossible to resist. In Europe, knights with this level of power enjoyed the highest honor of paladin. This rank was only one level higher than Grand Knight, but the gap between the two was like heaven and earth. For example, it was not strange for a person with the title of Paladin to kill a mythical beast or a god ancestor, but the existence of Grand Knight could barely cope with it. Previously, in Italy, Noah and his companions had encountered many mythical beasts. At that time, even if Erica and Liliana joined forces, it was still very difficult to deal with a mythical beast. Now, Erica was alone facing Witch Yuan, who could exert the power comparable to that of a mythical beast at any time. Of course, as long as one was aware of the situation, no one would be confused by the evenly matched competition in front of them. Therefore, the current situation was only temporary. Next, it was the real beginning. Just as Noah was thinking about this, the situation in the field changed immediately. Clang! With a loud collision sound of a saber and a sword, Erica and Hui Na were both shaken to a distance by each other's strength. They raised their weapons and pointed at each other, resuming the confrontation. Miss Erica is really powerful. Hui Na's expression was still calm, but the smile on her pretty face became much sharper than before. Hui Na's feeling is right. You're also powerful. You deserve to be the next head of the Qingqiu courtyard, Erica replied with ease. You do have the ability to be our king's follower. But if that's the case, the words that you said to replace me and Lily aren't convincing enough. You're right. Hui Na nodded generously. Well then, Hui Na, we need to get serious. With that said, an indescribable aura began to spread from Hui Na's body. I am willing to use this body as a sacrifice, please appease the spirit of frenzy. The solemn spirit of words reverberated in the air with Hui Na's lovely voice as a medium. Qianye Pe, Godzi Yuan Mao, can surpass, today, my name, I regret not, at this moment, a power that made humans shudder slowly rose from Hui Na's delicate body like an invisible wave. Sensing that power, the confident smile on Erica's face finally faded bit by bit. Not to mention Erica, even Yuri and Liliana who were watching on the sidelines reacted to it. Is that the aura of God? Liliana was shocked. Could it be that Hui Na of the Qingqiu courtyard can borrow the power of God? That Witch Yuan actually has the aptitude for the God-vanquishing spell. By becoming a witch who served God, she could borrow the power of God and let a small part of God's power reside in her body. She would become God's emissary and wield the power of God. This kind of existence also existed in Europe. The magic world in Europe called this kind of existence a spiritualist, and the magic they used to borrow the power of God was called the God-vanquishing spell. In other words, it was the same kind of existence as Hui Na. However, in Europe, there had not been a spiritualist who could use the God-vanquishing spell for many years. There was actually such a rare talent in Japan's magic world. Feeling the power gradually rising from Hui Na's body, Erica's hand holding the sword tightened slightly. This is a bit troublesome. Even Erica, who had always been confident and flamboyant, could not help but admit that it was troublesome. One could imagine how surprised and dignified she was. It seems that if I don't take out my trump card, I can't win. Without any hesitation, Erica let the curse power in her body burn like a flame and wildly surge out of her body. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, Lord, why have you forsaken me? Erica suddenly raised the Lion King's heart to the sky and chanted loudly in an awe-inspiring voice. It was the spirit of words used to free Erica Branteri's strongest magic. Lord, I call during the day, but you don't answer. When I call during the night, you are silent. But you are the God who has become a saint and has been baptized by the many hymns of Israel. Undoubtedly, it was a spirit of words chanted loudly in an awe-inspiring voice. But the spirit of words contained an extremely strong sense of despair, shaking the air. At this moment, the surrounding temperature began to plummet at an alarming speed. My bones are all decaying and collapsing, my heart has turned into wax, and my body has dissolved in it. Please abandon me in the dust of death. Dogs surround me, and I will be abused by evildoers. Loneliness. Despair. Confusion. Curse. The spirit of words with all kinds of negative emotions that could make humans die filled every corner of the surrounding space along with Erica's voice, causing the temperature in this space to drop continuously until it reached a bone-chilling level. Become my power, grant me help as soon as possible. Save my soul from the sword, save me from the lion's teeth, save me from the horn of a buffalo. A pitch-black whirlwind gathered on the sword that Erica raised to the sky and gradually spun. However, it was not real wind, but a curse materialized in the form of wind. Let me tell you the name of the Lord. Praise him at the center of the world, convert and dedicate him. An explosive power surged from Erica's body. At this moment, the magic that Erica was using was called Calvary's Spirit of Words. It was a spell of despair and longing for redemption that ancient saints poured out to God before their deaths. It was a secret ritual that enjoyed the title of combat magic in Europe. When using this magic, just hearing the spirit of words chanted by the caster would blind the average person, and the physically weak would directly collapse. If the caster had the intention, she could even curse and kill everyone present who heard the spirit of words that contained the power of despair. Therefore, the moment Erica's spirit of words sounded, Liliana increased the spell power in her body to resist the despair and curse that came with it. Yoli's body stiffened, but Noah pulled her into his arms to prevent her from being affected by the spirit of words of despair. Hui Na widened her eyes slightly. Then, her eyes finally surged with excitement. That's amazing, Miss Erica. I didn't expect you to have such a trump card. Hui Na already feels threatened. That wasn't just a casual remark. The combat magic called Calvary's Spirit of Words had the power to inflict a certain degree of damage to gods and godslayers. It was the highest level of secret ritual that paladins below the rank of paladins could use. Okay. Hui Na's smile turned a little sinister. Hui Na won't hold back. As if intending to compete with the pitch-black whirlwind, a gray storm surged out of Hui Na's body. The storm of black and gray instantly swept across the field. On one side was a curse that could inflict a certain degree of damage to gods. On the other side was the power of wind that borrowed the power of gods to wield. The two storms wreaked havoc in the suburbs and expanded to the peak when Erica and Hui Na aimed their weapons at each other. If the two girls clashed directly like this, it would definitely cause a huge impact. Under such circumstances, even Liliana couldn't stand it anymore. She hurriedly spoke to Noah. Your Majesty. Please stop them. It's too dangerous if this continues. Indeed. Both Erica and Hui Na were no longer holding back. They had brought out their strongest trump cards. Next, no matter what the outcome was, Erica and Hui Na would definitely be severely injured to varying degrees. It was even possible that one of them would directly die. Although Noah had a way to resurrect Erica and Hui Na, that wasn't a reason for him to sit back and watch his companions die. Therefore, Noah, who felt that it was about time, nodded immediately. He reached out his hand and let the golden ripples spread out like water ripples around him. It was at this moment that something unexpected happened. A black shadow suddenly shot out from the other end of the space. Chapter 1456. That black shadow was like an extremely fine silk thread, and even those with excellent eyesight would find it difficult to detect its existence. However, that silk-like black shadow cut through space, bringing with it a subtle sound of breaking through the air that was directly buried by the raging black whirlwind and gray storm, and shot from the other end of the sky. That speed was abnormally fast. Even if it could not be compared to the godly speed that could even control time, it could still be said to be comparable to lightning speed. Coupled with the fact that the black shadow was difficult to catch, and did not carry any hostility, killing intent, or malice, even Noah only noticed its existence when the black shadow was only a few meters away from him. Of course, with Noah's ability, it was more than enough for him to react at such a distance. Be careful. At that moment, Noah was slightly shocked, and he pulled Liliana into his arms, along with Yoli, who had just been protecting her. into his arms, and grabbed a girl's slender waist with one hand, and with the tip of his foot on the ground, he quickly retreated. However, the target of the black shadow was not Noah and his party at all. Under the astonished gaze of Noah, the black shadow, like a bird in a cage, rushed straight into the wave-like golden ripples that had just fluctuated. Yes. The opponent's target was not Noah and his party at all, but the treasure vault called the Gate of Babylon. No. That's not right either. To be more precise, it should be said that the opponent's target was an item in the Gate of Babylon. Therefore, under Noah's astonished gaze, the silk-like black shadow rushed into the wave-like golden ripples, and immediately shot out from it. However, the black shadow that shot out from the Gate of Babylon was no longer in the form of a silk thread, but in the form of a bead. And in the bead-like black shadow, there was a fist-sized, obsidian-like badge. It was the Stone of Gorgon. The black shadow wrapped around the Stone of Gorgon rose into the sky like a dark meteor, and disappeared into the clouds in an instant. Looking at this scene, Noah seemed to understand something, and he raised his head and looked at the clouds. The sudden phenomenon naturally attracted the attention of Erica and Hui Na, who were about to charge into the fray. The two girls, who were about to strike with all their might, stared blankly at the black shadow that rose into the sky and disappeared into the clouds. After they reacted, they quickly put down the weapons in their hands and cancelled the spells of Golgotha's word and God's descent. The dark whirlwind and grey storm raging in the suburbs gradually dissipated. Erica and Hui Na both looked at Noah speechlessly, and they seemed to be caught off guard by this sudden change. As for Yoli and Liliana, they had no idea what was going on at all. They stayed in Noah's arms with a blank look on their faces, not reacting for a long time. Noah was the only one who was looking at the clouds in the sky. At this moment, the whole sky suddenly surged with darkness for no reason. It was the night. The bright sky in the daytime suddenly seemed to be accelerated by the flow of time, and was covered by the emerging darkness. In an instant, the bright day turned into a dark night. Soon after, a light and low, sacred and dark ballad resounded under the night sky. I sing the hymn of the Trinity Goddess, connecting the sky, earth, and darkness, for reincarnation and wisdom. I sing the song of the goddess that has been degraded. As a queen, I am regarded as a forbidden snake, for the queen's sigh. I sing the hymn of the goddess that has been broken in body and mind, humiliated by a noble father, for the humiliation of a loving mother. My name is Athena, the daughter of Zeus, the patron of Athens, an eternal virgin. The past, for the Mother Earth that gives birth to all. The past, for the Lord of the underworld who controls the darkness. The past, for the Queen of Wisdom who knows the scattered wisdom of the heavens. I swear, Athena is about to return to the original Athena. As the sacred and dark ballad resounded throughout the night, a radiant figure descended from the sky like a goddess. She slowly bloomed with brilliant white light in the night and slowly descended. Looking at the figure, Noah murmured as if he had expected it. So that's how it is, you've finally come to my side. Taking a closer look, it was a young girl about 17 or 18 years old. The young girl was wearing a Greek-style long white dress. Her entire body was emitting a brilliant white light, but the surrounding space was surging with waves of darkness. It was like a black fog that swept through the air, blowing her waist-length silver hair. She looked exceptionally beautiful. Her delicate face and beautiful appearance, even Alice, who was known as the most outstanding woman in Europe, could not beat her. Because, in mythology, this goddess was originally a virgin goddess famous for her beauty. The beautiful goddess floated under the night, looking down, but there was no one else in her eyes at all. Only Noah was looking at Noah. Looking at Noah standing on the ground, the beautiful goddess seemed to be looking at something special, like looking at a sweetheart, or simply looking at a fat prey, and she let out a charming laugh like a silver bell. I know, my fated one, you have a keen intuition and can find any enemy, but there is a limit to the distance. In order to retrieve the snake, I have been trying not to stimulate your senses, keeping a distance as far away as possible, and hiding my presence, secretly waiting for an opportunity. Now, I have finally waited for it. The god relic called Gorgon's stone had a deep connection with the goddess. No matter how far away, the goddess can clearly feel its location. Even if the stone of Gorgon is stored in another space, it will be the same. Although I don't know why, but in the past month, the snake aura that I placed on your body suddenly disappeared without a trace. But not long ago, the snake aura that I placed on your body reappeared. So, I came. It seems that even the goddess of snakes has no way to cross the world barrier and sense the existence of the stone of Gorgon that goes out of this world to another world. Then, after Noah returned to this world, the goddess who sensed the presence of the stone of Gorgon came directly. Moreover, she has been hiding in the dark, silently watching Noah. In order to wait for this moment. My fated enemy. The beautiful goddess floated high in the air, staring at Noah with burning emotions in her eyes. I have finally recovered the body of the Queen of the Trinity. It is time for you and me to fulfill our agreement and compete. The berserk curse power gushed out from the goddess' slender and beautiful body, spreading in all directions. Under the stimulation of the violent curse power, Yuri, who had spirit vision, spoke in a trembling voice. The disobedient Athena, with just this sentence, everyone present understood what kind of existence the goddess in front of them was. Especially Erica and Liliana, looking at the goddess who once appeared in front of them in the form of a young girl, and now had retrieved the snake part and turned into a young girl, they raised their swords and faced the sky. However, there was no one else in Athena's eyes at all. For the high and mighty goddess, mortals were not worth mentioning at all. Athena only had Noah in her eyes. Perhaps, with the relationship between Noah and Athena, even if there were other gods' layers nearby, Athena's first focus would be on Noah, right? The relationship between the two of them was bound together by this bond that was stronger than family, friends, and lovers even though they were clearly enemies. Here, Noah and Athena reunited. Chapter 1457. Under the dark night, the beautiful goddess stood in the air as if she was facing the wind. Her white and silver waist-length hair fluttered in the wind like the moonlight. The scene was exceptionally beautiful. Looking at Athena, who was floating in midair under the night sky, Noah didn't expect to reunite with her under such circumstances. After all, you are Athena. I thought you would definitely challenge me openly to take the power of the snake back from me. Noah looked straight at Athena. But, I didn't expect the result to be like this. If the situation allows, I wouldn't want to do this either. Athena seemed to agree with Noah's feelings and shook her head regretfully. If it's possible, I would also like to taste the fate between us bit by bit, and then slowly reap the results. But now, the situation doesn't allow me to continue like this. The situation doesn't allow. Noah was slightly taken aback and asked in confusion. What do you mean? Athena fell silent. After a while, she turned her head and looked into the distance as if she was looking at an existence that couldn't be captured by the naked eye. Ever since I sensed the aura of the snake and came to this land at the end of the east, I can often feel the restlessness in the air. That is a sign that this land is about to become chaotic. Athena was the goddess of wisdom and the goddess of war in charge of war. As the goddess of wisdom, Athena had the ability to predict the future and was wise enough to predict the future. And as the goddess of war, Athena could feel the arrival of war and disputes at any time. Now, the goddess who had recovered the identity of the ancient Trinity Queen of the divine realm asserted in an indiscernible but incomparably certain tone. The hero sleeping on this land is about to wake up and start the war against the demon king and the god slayer again. The part of me that is the goddess of wisdom told me so. Athena's words made Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Kira look at each other. Noah was silent for a while and sighed. As expected, you know that the last king is sleeping on this land. I am indeed aware of this matter. Athena retracted her gaze from afar and turned her attention back to Noah. So, I came to find you, and did not hesitate to use this method to take back the power of the snake that belonged to me and fulfill the fate between us. Is that so? Noah shrugged. Although I can more or less guess why you suddenly became so anxious, let me ask you the reason and confirm a little. Since you've already guessed it, why are you still asking me when you already know the answer? How disrespectful to the goddess. If it was anyone else, I definitely wouldn't let them off so easily, but since it's you, I won't be angry, Athena replied while saying such ambiguous words with her beautiful face. This concubine has said before that as this concubine's fated enemy, this concubine will not let you die in the hands of that man. Letting you return to the earth is this concubine's responsibility. This sentence made Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Kira's hearts sink slightly. The meaning of Athena's words was quite obvious. This goddess of wisdom believed that once the last king was awakened, then Noah would definitely not be able to defeat him, and there was even a possibility of him surviving. Therefore, after sensing that the last king might be awakened at any time in the near future, Athena was anxious to take back the god relic of the Gorgon stone in such a sudden way, restore her identity as the Queen of the Trinity, retrieve the highest level of god power, and challenge Noah. Granting life and death is the responsibility of this concubine as the god of the underworld. Returning to the underworld that I am in charge of is equivalent to returning to the embrace of this concubine who is also the goddess of the earth who gives life. Athena looked like a girl who was expressing her love to her sweetheart, looking at Noah with burning eyes. So, Noah Dole, this concubine will take you into the underworld that I am in charge of, grant you death, and make you my property. Be prepared. As soon as she finished speaking, a surge of curse power gushed out from Athena's body. Although the power of the curse was not as strong as that of the great sage, heaven's equal, who was supported by the universe and the stars, it was strong enough to compete with the highest level gods like Welslana, Mercato, and Perseus, whom Noah had fought before. This was the true strength of Athena who had retrieved the power of the Trinity. Rumble. Under such circumstances, the ground where Noah and the rest were standing began to tremble slightly. Both Erica and Liliana reacted almost immediately. "Oh Leonheart King, show me the essence of the struggle now, my wings, become the steel of the phantom blade. Master Silver Craftsman, grant me power," the two knights chanted at the same time, holding the heart of the Lion King and Master Silver Craftsman in their hands. One of them stepped forward and stood in front of Noah. As if intending to protect Noah, he pointed the sword in his hand at Athena who was in midair. Seeing this, Huina finally reacted. Her usually innocent face more or less showed a trace of annoyance. As soon as they sensed the possibility of a battle, Erica and Liliana immediately went into battle mode, standing in front of Noah fearlessly to protect Noah. That was the action that the true followers of a king should take. After traveling together for nearly half a year, Erica and Liliana had developed the awareness to become Noah's sword and shield at any time to protect Noah. Compared to Erica and Liliana, Huina, who was confident that she would not lose to the two knights from the beginning, was quite weak in this aspect, which fully reflected the gap between them. This gap was undoubtedly equivalent to telling Huina who was the most suitable person to be Noah's follower. It was because of this that Huina, who was previously very confident that she could replace Erica and Liliana, was a little annoyed. Perhaps he had sensed Huina's annoyance. Noah's gaze did not move away from Athena, and he spoke softly to Huina without turning his head. "Huina, I'll leave Wanli Valley to you." "Yes, King." Huina's expression finally relaxed. She turned sideways and came in front of Yoli, holding her tachi, and also became alert. "Mr. Noah." Yoli poked his head out from behind Huina and spoke nervously. Then I, Wanli Valley, I'll leave the task of contacting Mr. Ganzue to you. Tell him the situation here and let him be prepared to deal with the aftermath." Noah did not hesitate to assign the task to Yoli. "Also, if you see anything with your spirit vision, remember to tell us." "Yes." Yoli showed a determined expression and took out his mobile phone. At this moment, the trembling of the ground suddenly stopped. This was because the ground in front of Noah and his group had unknowingly bulged in several places and gradually squirmed and distorted. The next moment, the squirming and distorted ground transformed into 3 giant snakes that were comparable in size to high-rise buildings. They hissed in the direction of Noah and his group. The air vibrated instantly. Looking at the 3 giant snakes, Erica, Yoli, Liliana, and Hui Na's group of 4 girls all had solemn expressions. Divine beasts. There are 3. Athena, who had recovered her full strength, summoned 3 divine beasts in a short moment. If humans wanted to summon each divine beast, they would need to gather at least 30 magicians or conjurers of the highest level to hold a large-scale ceremony and spend a very long time to successfully summon them. However, Athena summoned 3 divine beasts with just a raise of her hand. This was the difference between the god of disobedience and ordinary humans. Go! My followers! Athena, who was suspended in mid-air, ordered the 3-headed giant snake loudly. Devour all the followers of my old enemy. The 3-headed giant snake's eyes suddenly revealed a fierce light. With a momentum that seemed to be able to shake the earth, it let out a long hiss and rushed out to attack Noah and his group. The battle was about to start. Chapter 1458. Rumble. Amidst the tremors of the earth, 3 huge snake monsters as tall as skyscrapers crushed the fragile ground. While plowing a trail on the ground, they charged in the direction of Noah's group. That scene was as if several tall mountains were closing in on them. The momentum was extremely terrifying. Looking at the 3 gigantic snakes charging toward them with great momentum, a cold glint flashed in Noah's eyes. Traces of curse power surged from his body. But just as Noah was about to attack, Erica and Liliana stopped him at the same time. Your Majesty, leave this to us for now, Liliana said in a stern voice. Please save your strength to deal with Athena. It's just a divine beast. It's making a mountain out of a molehill to send a god-slaying demon king, Erica also said in a gorgeous and relaxed tone. Right now, it's probably just Athena's probing. Or maybe Athena is trying to adapt to her newly recovered strength and is testing her skills. So, as our trump card, you can't expose yourself so easily. After saying that, Erica and Liliana looked at each other and nodded. Erica raised the Lion King's heart in her hand and chanted Calvary's words again. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. Lord, why have you forsaken me? The despairing words reverberated in the air once again, causing the surrounding temperature to drop instantly. When Erica used Calvary again, Liliana also raised the Silver Grandmaster in her hand and made a declaration. People, listen to David's lament. Why do heroes fall? Why do war machines vanish? The words that were completely different from Erica's echoed, causing the surrounding air to slowly turn cold. This cold feeling was very similar to the Golgotha's word that Erica used. But the power contained in the 2 words was completely different. Erica's words contained the despair and hatred of someone who had been driven to a dead end. Liliana's words, on the other hand, were filled with sorrow that seeped into one's heart. It was as if the people of the world were lamenting and crying for a great figure who had passed away. It was very heart-wrenching. Mountains of Gilboa, I pray that sweet dew rain will descend upon you. Offer the sacrifices that thirsty beasts yearn for. Abandon yourself and become the shield of the brave warriors of the other side, the shield of Saul. Inject fat into you and dedicate yourself to this place. Under the sorrowful spirit of words, a blue radiance flickered on Liliana's silver grandmaster. At this moment, the magic that Liliana used was the same as Electra's Calvary's spirit. It was the highest level combat magic that could be learned under the rank of Holy Knight, the Song of Bow. If Erica's Calvary was to express the despair of a dying saint, then Liliana's Bow Song was to express the lament of a great hero who had passed away. Regardless of which side it was a combat magic spell that could bring a certain degree of damage to the divine capital and make the gods feel pain. Of course, although combat magic spells of this level could bring harm to the gods, the damage was very limited. Moreover, if it couldn't hit the target, it would be meaningless. For the gods, this kind of magic spell was only slightly pleasing to the eye. It could break through the curse resistance of the god slayers and the god of disobedience and thus take effect, but it didn't mean that it could bring about a threat. However, it was nothing to the god slayers and the god of disobedience, but it was a threat to the divine beasts to a certain extent. Therefore, Erica gathered the power of the Lion King's heart that carried despair and stabbed it out at the speed of lightning, slashing through one of the giant snakes. Slash! With a tearing sound, the giant snake's scales and skin were cut open, and a large amount of blood sputtered out. The giant snake let out a loud hiss, and the murderous glint in its eyes intensified. It turned its head and charged in Erica's direction. At this time, Liliana suddenly jumped up like a swallow and cut through the sky. She waved the silver Grandmaster Craftsman in her hand that contained the power of grief. Like an arrow, she flew past quickly. Slash! With another tearing sound, the other giant snake's eyeball was pierced through, and it let out a loud scream that shook the air. The second giant snake also turned its body and chased after Liliana, who was leaping back and forth in the air like a bird. Only the last giant snake was left, and it still charged in Noah's direction without hesitation. However, at this moment, a light voice sounded behind Noah. In the morning fog of the grassy plains, the bottom of the footbag gradually became wet. After a long journey through the Su Changshao plains, and then crossing the White River Pass, although it was only a small portion, the unique aura of a god rose from Noah's back. Under the heavens, Ji Ci, the food of the country, Ding Ci, etc. My wife is the ruler of the country, commanding the soldiers, calling for Ji Ci to come down, breaking thousands of plates. People will be in harmony, not serving as officials, the country will be in harmony with Ji Ci. The ethereal word spirit rippled in the dark night, causing a violent gust of wind to rise from the battlefield. It turned into countless sharp, invisible blades that rushed into the sky before descending, slamming heavily into the remaining giant snake. This time, a series of tearing sounds rang out one after another. The giant snake let out a painful hiss as its body was continuously sliced by the invisible wind blades. In an instant, its flesh was lacerated and blood flowed out. Then, Hui Na, with her katana in hand, leaped forward and came in front of Noah. With her back to Noah, she shouted loudly. "Don't forget about me." After saying that, Hui Na rushed out with a whirlwind all over her body. Susanoo was the storm god. After borrowing the power of the storm god, Hui Na could also use a small portion of the storm god's authority to manipulate the wind. Its power was even stronger than that of the spirit of speech and the song of Bao. Just now, if Erica and Hui Na continued to fight, the final winner would definitely be Hui Na. Hence, while Erica and Liliana were struggling to deal with one of the divine beasts, Hui Na was already entangled with the remaining giant snakes. For a while, the three girls were evenly matched with the three divine beasts. However, Noah knew that the girls were in a bad situation. For example, Erica and Liliana's Calvary's Word and Song of the Bow were gradually declining in power. After all, although the two combat magic skills were exquisite and could even break through the curse resistance of the god Slayer and the god of disobedience, that was only the effect, not the power. As the highest level of combat magic under the rank of paladin, although it could threaten the divine beasts, it was not enough to annihilate them. If they wanted to annihilate the divine beasts, Erica and Liliana were not strong enough. Unless the two of them could reach the rank of paladin and learn the highest level of combat magic that only the highest rank of paladin could learn. Otherwise, only by joining forces could they have a way to deal with a divine beast. In a one-on-one fight, Erica and Liliana's power was still a distance away from that of the divine beasts. Although Hui Na was evenly matched with the divine beasts by relying on the god's descent, she gradually lost her strength and began to slow down. Using the god's descent would put a burden on the body. If Hui Na couldn't deal with the divine beasts before her body couldn't move, she would definitely lose. Therefore, the situation was quite critical for the girls. This made Athena, who was floating in the air, let out a charming laugh. This concubine's fated enemy. It seems that your maidservants are no match for this concubine's family. In the competition between my subordinates, the one who wins will be this concubine. Hearing this, Noaya did not have the time to speak when a dim light flashed in the eyes of Yuli by the side. This caused her face to be filled with joy as she cried out. Everyone! Please attack the tail of the snake. That is the connection between the divine beast of the snake and the earth. The place where it obtains essence and life. Erica, Liliana, and Hui Na's eyes lit up. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.